Good evening, everyone. Hello, hello. Uh, it's Wednesday. A little different than normal. We will be though doing. We will be on Thursday night, tomorrow night at 9:30, like normal. But tonight we're gonna have a special guest. We're waiting for her to get here. If you guys weren't aware from the thumbnail and the description, it's going to be Dani Ahn, also known as Dani Ahn Direct. And if you were also not aware, she ran for the district attorney for Salt Lake County. And Salt Lake County, if you guys are unaware, is the county where Salt Lake City, Utah is. And it's not just, it's not just a cow town, despite what you may think. Salt Lake City is actually got a population that's pretty significant. It is a population of 200,000 people in the city itself. And the county alone, the county is 1.1 million people. So she ran against an opponent, the incumbent. Obviously, if she won, she wouldn't be wasting her time with us. But things I think didn't turn out the way she planned on that. But she's here, and I'm going to see if she'd like to talk about it. And if you guys have questions, certainly put them in, and let's go from there. And Dani, give me a thumbs up if you're ready, just so I don't. Yep. All right, here she is, guys, ladies and gentlemen. Dani Ahn.
Hey, so great to see you. I'm so sorry for being a little bit late. I was actually just propounding some discovery that I forgot to get sent off.
Oh.
So I need to get it sent off so I'm within the 28-day limit.
Yeah. Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. Thanks for being here. I know it's I just appreciate that you are willing to come on and talk. So Dani, if you don't mind, if you don't mind telling people a little bit about yourself. I know a lot of people know who you are because I know a lot of people here have seen you all over the place. But in case somebody here has lived under a rock, if you don't mind.
Sure. So my name is Danielle Ahn. I was raised all throughout the United States, primarily here in Utah. I've spent the last 10 consecutive years here in Utah, which just blows my mind. Specifically, Salt Lake, I've been here for 7 consecutive years. And within that time, I have seen Salt Lake County go from a safe, well-balanced, prosperous city to essentially Gotham. I mean, there's crime rampant everywhere, right? And I want to chalk it up to, well, we have an influx of people coming from California, right? And whenever you have an increase of population, you're going to have an increase in crime. That was what I would like to chalk it up to. But this is per capita estimates. And when I looked at the data, when I was in law school, I went to law school at the University of Utah. After law school, or before law school, I actually worked at the governor's office with his general counsel, which is what encouraged me to become an attorney in the first place, because I realized that law is where policy meets the road, right? This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where things are actually taking form and taking shape. And I had worked at the State Department. And after working in the State Department, I worked at Raytheon. I thought for a long time I would be a boring transactional attorney. I did IP moot court, and I realized, nope, I love litigation. I love oral argument, and this is not the place where I want to be. And so I moved into litigation. I started working at a small law firm in downtown Salt Lake City. And working at that firm, I did civil litigation. While I was doing that,
When did you get licensed, if I can ask?
Yeah. So everybody asked that, and they're like, "Oh, you're a baby. Why are you running?" I was licensed in 2019. So from a legal perspective, that's sort of baby-esque. And a lot of people were shocked that I had the gumption to go ahead and run regardless, even though I've only been in practice for 4 years. The reality is that the position itself is, people think that DA ought to be out there, trying cases. And the reality is that you're more of an administrator. You have 2 branches of the DA's office. You have the civil side and you have the criminal side. You have to manage budgets, not only from the county's budget, but also from the state. And you're always vying for different government grants and whatnot, so that you can make sure that you have the resources you need to do your job. It's unfortunate that DAs don't typically do their job. Hey, American Dreamer, so great to see you. It's unfortunate that DAs have stopped doing their job, that their job and their focus has shifted away from prosecution generally, for any any one of number of the reasons that we prosecute people, any number of the reasons that we enforce the law, they've decided that it's in the interest of justice to just not enforce the law, specifically against certain demographic groups, which is inherently racist and unethical. And how they're allowed to do that in our Constitution, under our constitutional framework, is beyond me. So, yeah.
And no, that was actually really good. Thank you for going through that. And the other thing, though, when you're the prosecutor, also you get to set policy. You
Yes.
get to, as you made it clear, you get to chart how you're going to do things.
That's correct. And you know what's amazing to me is that the DA has a policy that is very clear, and people always say, "Oh, well, I like that," until they think about the ramifications of it. There is a policy in the DA's handbook, and I'm sure it's still on the website, that says you should not bring or maintain charges against believe is innocent, regardless of the evidence provided. That is a word for word quote from their policy.
I mean,
so if I have a friend, John, and I don't believe he's guilty of doing anything, I believe John would never do anything wrong, I shouldn't bring or maintain charges against John. That is the loophole that the DA has given himself to avoid liability, either from a legal perspective or from a public perspective, when he declines prosecution. I filed 3 grandma requests, which are like our FOIA requests, to get information on the actual number of cases that were being declined. And we found over 200 to 300 declination letters on very serious violent offenses. And these are repeat violent offenders. And all of their cases were declined in the interest of justice. And they were all word for word the same declination letter. Someone was sitting there just, control C, control V, every single one. And nobody was actually screening these cases, it seemed like. And if they were, why were they not bringing these cases forward? Now, I can understand prioritization, but this is the same DA that when his offices were painted red because he declined to prosecute a police officer in a police officer involved shooting, his brand new offices were painted red. So what did he decide to do? He decided to not only charge each one of those protesters, he gave them gang enhancements so that they would spend the rest of their lives in jail on I think it's a 2nd-degree felony is what he was charging some of them with. Some he had charged with terroristic threats, which was insane. Absolutely insane. He got lectured by the ABA. Now, this was shocking. The ABA tends to be extremely liberal.
This is probably during 2020, right? When this happened?
This was prior to 2020.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then when the ABA got involved is once I started to dig into what was going on with these cases, I found that barely 30% of sexual assault cases were being charged. And out of those, not even 30% were being charged. Those were what were being screened. And then a smaller percentage of that led to charges being filed. So that meant that 70% of sexual assault cases that were submitted to the DA's office have not even been reviewed. And that's devastating because the DA is also in charge of the CJC, the Child Justice Center here. So that deals with crimes against children, violent crimes and sexual crimes against children. None of those perpetrators were being investigated. To the extent that they were investigated and we had information ready to go and they've been recommended to the DA, they weren't being charged. So there is nothing to stop a lot of these perpetrators from reoffending. And then when they do get charged, they were getting pled out. And we're talking multiple plea deals over the course of decades in many cases of people who were beating their wives, not once, not twice, not 3 times. They were beating their new girlfriend, their girlfriend's daughter, their girlfriend's sister, their mom, and they were spending literally zero time in jail. We had a case where he decided to charge a gentleman with, and I shouldn't say gentleman, the guy's a monster. This guy had spent time in federal prison in California for getting drunk and murdering his then wife. He moved out here to Utah, got himself a new girlfriend, got drunk again, shot his girlfriend to death, and her dying declaration is, He killed me. He shot me. He murdered me. She dies. He's again charged here with manslaughter and let off. I think he spent a total of maybe 6 months in jail.
Wow.
So if you were on the street, and I have recordings of the DA saying, yeah, if you're selling a dime to get a dime, I'm not going to prosecute you. So if you're not going to prosecute low-level drug offenders,
that's awesome.
if you're not going to prosecute theft of certain demographics, you know, and it's less than $300, that's what's interesting to me is we basically have that policy here. I think I even found a paper
like
that
California.
says that's right. And I joke all the time about going to San Francisco and getting myself a pair of sunglasses in San Francisco just to say I did, and actually stealing them, because then they're San Francisco sunglasses. I mean, this is pervasive throughout the United States. And it's pervasive because there's one backer in all of these races. When I ran against the DA, I mean, I had been asked to run.
Are you running? Are you referring to some Hungarian gentleman?
Yes. Yeah, I am. Yeah, no, George Soros has backed all of these races, and they were good investments. They were great investments because think about it, you know, people with felonies can still vote in some jurisdictions. Is it all jurisdictions or only some? I know
it depends where you live.
Okay, so here you can, okay? But let's say that you have a subgroup or
in Ohio you can, but it's after a couple of years you eventually get it back. But it's like 5-6 years down the road after you've completed everything.
But I mean, it's an incredibly powerful tool because the DA's discretion is just so broad. And I don't know what kind of checks we want to put on the DA's office, but I think that that's a decision that needs to be made by lawmakers. I think it's something that is worthwhile to look at in the interim, because I do feel like prosecutors have very, very, very broad discretion.
They do.
And so, I mean, there's just... It's disturbing to me, the policies that have been implemented here in Salt Lake. And so I was approached about 5 days prior to the deadline to file. And it was a county council member. And he said, hey, Dani, you're an attorney. And we like you at the time I was a senior policy advisor to the county council. And he said, we love your policy suggestions. You're really good at catching these issues in contracts, because at the end of the day, the county council has to sign off on all of the land transactions and policies that are implemented. There was one policy that we'll talk about later, but he was like, hey, you're really good at catching that. And you've understood the budget process extremely well. And you were the one to catch the slush fund that the DA had set up. He really had. He had set up a slush fund and then was going to the county council saying he never had enough money to pay his prosecutors, and that's why he wasn't filling seats.
Oh, so he had empty spots open in his office on top.
He was criminally understaffed. We had budgeted for him 150 prosecutors on the criminal side, and I think he was, last I checked, at I think maybe either 75 or 100 openings. So plus or minus 25.
So like a 50% opening, possibly. That might not seem like a lot, guys, but remember, let's say you gave each prosecutor 100 cases. That's 100 cases a year. Each year you add on. So they're going through cases that might be 2-3 years long. That's a lot of unanswered things in a county of over 1 million people.
I was already clued into the DA's problems when I was in law school, because I worked with Judge Cassell, Paul Cassell, and now former Judge Cassell, but he's actually one of the attorneys who represented the victims going after a certain Mr. Epstein. He's traveled the country trying to get victims' rights in place in each jurisdiction. He also was a huge advocate for removing mandatory minimums, because he saw a story when he was a judge of a man he had sentenced, and he was required to sentence him to the time in jail that he had. But this guy ostensibly didn't really do that much to deserve to spend that much time in jail. And so he became a powerful advocate against mandatory minimums. Regardless, he's a huge victims' rights advocate. And when he and I were discussing the certain Epstein cases, I said, hey, why don't, what about what's going on here in Utah? Because I had a friend who had been SA'd here in Utah. She had referred her case to the DA in Utah County, and they did nothing with her case, although she had ample evidence to bring charges against this guy. Now, this guy happened to be an immigrant who was here illegally, and nothing happened. And he continued to harass her. She ended up having to leave our jurisdiction, move to another state to go into hiding.
Ooh.
And so similar cases were going on here in Salt Lake. And their cases, there was just multiple declination to charges or multiple declinations coming out. And he would decline charges and not offer a reason, which the law has now changed to basically say, if you're going to decline to bring charges under the victim's rights protections, you need to at least explain why. Well, now we have to change that statute again because his explanation as to why is the same for each and every defendant. So that can't be the standard anymore.
No, I gotta say, are you guys getting a hold of these letters and the letters are all coming the same?
They literally all, I wish I had some redacted letters to post here. I think I used to on my website. If you go to DA4, the number 4DA.com, it might be there. And they were just copy and paste. 200, 300. I mean, it was just open the file. So anyway, the ABA, so let me back up. So he was declining these cases while I was in law school. And my professor at the time was trying to change the law to allow the attorney general to look at the cases that the DA was declining. Well, what allegedly happened is the DA, all pissed off that he was going to be losing some of his power and authority, that anyone would question his judgment, decided to target these victims that were backing the law by contacting the New York Times and giving them their contact information so that the New York Times could go and dig and besmirch these poor victims publicly. I can't hear you, Sean.
Sorry. So like a random SA victim who's just nobody important.
Yep.
New York Times. So basically like Taylor Rent's Kane, hey, what's up? You want to talk?
Yep. And she was a Jane Doe too. And it was the harassment that these poor victims received was astronomical. And when I heard that, I went, this guy is not my friend. And I determined that when I was in law school. So fast forward, I graduate law school. I take the bar in 2019. Now I'm working for the Salt Lake County Council in 2021 and 2022. And they come to me and they're just like, hey, you're really smart about this. Why don't you throw your hat in? We have no Republicans running against this guy. He is going to run unopposed. I said, like hell he is. I said, you pay half of my filing fee and I'll do it right now. So I did. I marched my butt down there, filed right there. My boss said, I don't want a candidate as my employee. But she was like, look, as long as you're doing your job during work hours so that you're not using your campaign, you're not funding your campaign basically with tax dollars, right? Because if you're campaigning while on the clock, you're basically using tax dollars to fund your campaign.
You have to wait till you're an incumbent to do that.
Exactly. And so, which is just so hilarious.
That's the little hint there. That's a little trick in the game.
Yeah, once you're incumbent, then you can use your position to campaign and you can use tax dollars to campaign. But ostensibly, I'm certain that this guy's going to watch this. I still have trolls coming after me who are like, Sim Gill won, you're a loser. And I'm like,
well, I'm not talking about him. I'm just saying like every politician, like once you win.
Politician, generally speaking, sure. Yes. So anyway, after I get all these declination letters back, after I determine I'm going to run against this guy, no one else ran. So, I mean, I was the candidate and I started to do some investigation, some digging. I found out that we had seen a 46% increase in homicide in the past 3 years as of 2022. I don't know what the numbers are now. I'm guessing they're significantly higher because generally what happens with a lot of defendants is, and I've said this a million times with especially drug defendants, the vast majority of people who go to jail once don't want to go to jail again. The vast majority of people who are punished, generally speaking, do not go back. It's the repeat violent offenders that are the problem. That is where you have escalation on escalation on escalation, because in their conception of reality, they're saying, I have nothing left to lose. So why not? Like, what are you going to do? Put me back in jail? You're going to send me to prison? Please, right? I'd rather be in prison than the county jail. So that's fine, right? And I start to look into this and I'm going, wait a second. So if there's been a 46% increase per capita in Utah or in Salt Lake County of homicide, what are the increases on other violent offenses? And I noticed that there was a slight decrease in some years of these other violent offenders. And what clicked for me, and maybe I'm wrong in this logic, but from my perspective, it was like, okay, if I look at all the successful murder convictions that would result from those years, you'll see that there's a pattern with all these defendants where it's assault, 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 murder, right? So of course the assaults are decreasing because the percentage of people who end up in the murder category have now graduated to murder. I can't hear you.
I said it's like Pokemon. You got your progression chart.
Yeah, exactly. But like not
You
like
evolve.
an EV Pokemon where you can evolve to different crimes. It's a pretty straight evolution. So
It's predictable. That's important.
it's very predictable. Now, drug running, human trafficking, that tends to have evolution into other various spurious crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of physical assault, especially assault against women or other vulnerable populations, it tends to graduate over time. Mm-hmm. And so I went, wait a second. I think criminals think they can just do what they want here and there's not going to be consequences. So the more I looked into these cases, I went, holy shit, there are no consequences for criminality. And these aren't like, hey, I stole some gum from the convenience store, or, I bounced a check, or maybe I forged a check, or, little what we consider light crime, right? Like my husband getting pickpocketed at the gym, which just happened recently. But those are considered smaller crimes. I'm talking like multiple DUIs that result in death.
Ooh.
Or serious injury, or intense robberies, right? The higher crime robberies, 15,000, 10,000. I'm talking about assault with a deadly weapon being pled down to a simple assault where there's a woman who's been barricaded in her basement and her ex has a knife to her throat, threatening the police and threatening her at the same time. Why would you plead someone down to a simple assault in a case like that is beyond me. But I kept seeing this over and over and over again. And I realized a lot of these prosecutors don't have discretion, which is beyond me, but it is true. There was a huge wage difference and a huge difference in treatment and behavior between the attorneys who were handling the capital murder cases and handling the more intense cases and those who were handling lower level offenses. And there was no training system to help these lower level offense prosecutors graduate to the higher offenses. And there wasn't really an internal training system in Salt Lake City, because Salt Lake City is under the same decree or the same option, what's called the optional plan, that Salt Lake County is. So the Salt Lake County DA is also the Salt Lake City DA.
Yes. Okay? And if you guys, Salt Lake City is its own county. If you guys weren't out there.
So what he was doing, though, is he was farming from Salt Lake City prosecutor's office, prosecutors for Salt Lake County. And the difference there is that Salt Lake City is limited in what they can charge and what they can prosecute, whereas Salt Lake County brings felony charges and can bring, those capital cases and the more serious cases. So that's deeply concerning, because what he was doing was taking bright young talent from Salt Lake City, where they needed experienced prosecutors, and moving them into Salt Lake County. And then when he was hiring outsourcing attorneys, he was bringing in inexperienced attorneys, or those who just happened to have, great stellar grades and were friends with him, right?
Yes. Oh, real quick, 1 second.
Yeah.
Hey, David, I fixed the redirect thing. You're all set. Sorry, he wanted to redirect me, and I had to figure out how to do that. So.
Oh, awesome. And so there were, my point is that there were multiple problems, and the problems all stemmed from policy. All stem from policy. So there was a reason, and it was worse too, because I'm not pro police to the degree that you shouldn't charge police officers when they do something wrong. Okay?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
not my angle. I'm pro police as long as they're doing their job correctly. The training is good. They're not covering for each other and their own asses. You hand me the bad one. You hand me the guy who's causing you guys problems. I'll take care of it. Right?
Yeah.
But that requires trust between the prosecutor's office and the police departments. There is zero trust right now. The two are not responding to each other. They're not communicating with one another. There is so much resentment built up between those two offices that it has become so dysfunctional that you can't even get officers to be able to move around their schedules to be present for trials. To testify. I mean, it's out of control. And every single thing that a police officer does is held to the highest standard there is. And then when they screw up even a little bit, they know that the band hammer is coming down on them, but not the actual guys that deserve to be sitting in jail for beating up their wives 18 times that they've had to be called out to 18 times in the past month. And then on top of that, you talk about police resources.
Have they aggressively prosecuted police in Salt Lake County?
Extremely aggressively, and they failed every single case.
So they've crashed and burned every time.
Crash and burned every time because there was no case in the beginning. And any objective viewer could tell you the same thing. I mean, and what's worse is that the DA will hold on to charges for 2 years before bringing charges against a police officer. So the police officer will be put on administrative leave, not be able to serve the community, not make money, not be able to go get another job, because as soon as they get another job, then they lose the benefits that they received through the union representation that they had in the seniority.
And if you try to get another job, they're going to say, oh, wow, you got charged with, whatever.
You may be charged with. Why did you leave your old precinct? Why did you leave here? Well, because I'm waiting on charges to come down. The DA hasn't made up his mind yet. Yeah. So the DA knows, even if the DA is going to lose on these, it's a way of getting back at these police officers. The resentment between the DA and the police, I do not understand. The DA has a very positive relationship, though, with Mike Brown, who is the police chief of Salt Lake City, who does nothing, extremely corrupt. He is an awful person. He has gotten away with so much bullshit. He treats his officers poorly. He treats the people of Salt Lake City poorly. I went to a town hall meeting and I asked one question. I said, why is it that if I am in the Avenues, which is the more wealthy area of Salt Lake?
No, the pinky up territory.
Yeah. If I'm there and I call the police, their response time is maybe a minute. If I'm downtown and I call the police, their response time is 15. And I'm close to the precinct. So why? Is it maybe because you're getting all of your donations when you run for office and when you help your buddies who've run for office get to where they are? Is that maybe why?
Yeah.
And I was banned from ever going back. Allegedly, he refused to answer any more of my questions. So, and it's terrifying for police officers who are good, who do want to be involved. I went on ride-alongs with police officers who were involved in involved shootings where it resulted in the death of potential defendants, of suspects. And I listened to their stories and I met with the suspects' families and I talked to both of them, and both of them agreed that, at least in this case, the suspect was in the wrong. And that it had an inevitable outcome that any reasonable person, not even reasonable police officer, but any reasonable person would have done. And the families had forgiven this police officer. There was no animosity there. But the DA held on to his charges for 5 years and then eventually charged him and lost. And this police officer was out there. It was so funny. There were so many opportunities he could have handed out tickets. He didn't. He didn't care that I was running for DA either. He was like, look, if I can, just get this guy home and not give him another DUI, or hey, this is a young kid. He screwed up this one time. He really needs a dad. That's the kind of community policing we need and want. And it's just not there now because you have instead these officers who are overworked, exhausted, hated, right? Objectively maligned. And then on top of that, they're bringing on green recruits who have no idea what they're doing. And they've all been fed a bunch of BS. And they're spending their time in diversity classes rather than learning self-defense or less lethal means of detaining a suspect and de-escalation. And the city and county is looking at the police officers and saying, yeah, I think we need to defund the police and reorient all of that money towards social workers.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. So is it okay if I use your like the guy you ran against name, or do you prefer to?
Yeah, Sim
do you
Gill.
want to refer to him as an opponent?
DA Sim
Or is
Gill.
this like, oh, we can't say his name?
No,
Okay.
people can look him up. Sim Gill. He's not going to appear
okay.
if I say his name 3 times.
Sim Gill. Okay. Well, I just didn't know.
He didn't appear when I asked him to debate either. So
I sent him a StreamYard link. So.
Oh, awesome.
So, has he himself come out and said that he's supporting defunding the police at all, or has he? Because I'm just curious to see how far he had gone in those statements.
He hasn't. Here's what he's done. He has signed on to letters propagated by national units, people, individuals.
Oh, so he agrees with them, but he never says it himself.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
now, and I kind of want to go back to this because I had a couple questions.
Sure.
This is something that, given what you've said here, this is something that's been kind of brewing for a while. You've had this idea like, I don't like how he's doing it. And it's not just all of a sudden somebody came to you and you're like, you know what? Why not? I'll give it a shot. This was something you already knew there were problems, but then this person just kind of gave you that final like little push, right? Was that kind of, you said your boss kind of came to you like that?
So I mean, that's essentially what happened to an extent. I knew I was always going to run for office because I care so much about the community. I just never had the desire to be a DA. And I still don't. And I did it when I was running, and I would tell people that, and they'd be like, well, then why are you running? And I'm like, because even I, with what little experience I have as a licensed practicing attorney, can tell you we're living in an upside down world, and it doesn't take a lot in terms of changing policy to get us back on the right track. That's why. Yeah.
And I think it's also fair, what better person do you want to run for an office? The person doesn't want the job. I mean, it goes back to that whole, well, I really want this job. It's like that you're probably not the person we should have running for it.
It's a shitty job objectively. You're underpaid. You're hated by everyone universally. Like no one likes you. And if they like you, then you're probably corrupt. That's my position. If you like the DA in your town, probably corrupt, probably covering for someone's ass, because no one should be immune from the DA if they're in the jurisdiction.
Yes.
And everyone should ubiquitously not want the DA to be coming after them. And so the DA should be a very lonely job. But when you have the DA going around shaking hands with politicians and representatives in your jurisdiction, hanging out, fundraising together, having a great time, going to cocktail party after cocktail party, you have to kind of question things a little bit. You have to be a little skeptical. Now, to a certain extent, you do need to be friends with those same politicians, especially if you want to get funding for your office.
Well, you can be civil and cordial with people. Just, you don't have to. So you kind of feel like you should be almost like a bit of a kind of like hanging out with nobody hangs out with the hangman.
A little bit,
but everybody knows him. Everybody knows
a little bit. And to me, the role of a prosecutor is a necessary evil. Right? It's a necessary evil. It's a product of people's inability to get along in society and function well. Okay. Now, how you're going to deal with those groups of people is where the policy comes in. Now, that's on the criminal side of things. This DA, I have issues with on the civil side of things. But by and large on the civil side of things. There were so many stupid policies that the DA backed that were run by the county mayor that I said this is going to end in long-lasting litigation, including a mining ban that they put on the east side, the East Bench. So what the county tried to do was prevent an open-air mine by saying
you can
we're
mine
going
in the
to
county.
ban all mining in this zone.
Hmm.
And I said, you're setting yourself up for a takings claim from hundreds of other mines that are going through this process, in addition to the main large mine that is going through Doppel, or not Doppel. It's our mining agency. Anyway, they were going through the process of getting approved for their mine through them, which they are legally allowed to do. And under state law, they were legally allowed to mine. So the county thought, oh, well, we'll put a stay on this, on their approval, by quickly changing the zoning laws. And I said, you can't do that. You can't do that. You are going to get sued up the ass. You're going to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in protracted litigation. And guess what? The judge is not going to agree with you. They're going to put a stay on the rezoning. They're going to allow this mine to go forward. And now you're spending tons of money for a mine that by the time it's done has probably surpassed its aggregate growth that it was considering, and is now in business. I mean, this is so stupid. So stupid. And the DA said, no, it's fine. You can do that. You should do that.
And I don't mean to belittle the criminal issues, but is the civil havoc that because it's on the civil side of it, it's about wreaking havoc in the economy, really. That's mainly what it's affecting. Would you argue that was more damaging than the obviously, yes, letting guys run loose and wild in the streets. Yeah, that's not good. But the damage he was doing to the economy, was that almost as big, or if not bigger, ultimately? It was a big problem, at least.
It's a big problem for taxpayers. I mean, they were just getting attacked on both ends, right? They were getting hit on both sides. They're paying for a DA who's not doing his job on the criminal side in protecting the public and enforcing the law. They're getting hit on this side because their taxpayer dollars are going to frivolous expenses that are unnecessary and litigation that's unnecessary. And then they have tax rate, tax increases every year, wondering why.
And then you've also got, if you're a resident and you want to do a business, well, you're being denied that right, or being hampered, or, attacked.
Essentially. And the two feed into each other. Where there is crime, there will not be economic growth.
Well, I mean, drug dealing
where there is economic growth, you see a decrease in crime. Pardon?
Drug dealing is economic growth.
Yeah. I mean, it's the black market. It's the dead. It's dead capital.
Crack kind of sells itself, but somebody still has to be there to hand it out.
Yeah. But it was just frustrating because
everywhere was problems.
Pardon?
So it's like, it wasn't just that one thing. It was the entire, everything about it was wrong, pretty much.
Everything. And it was the personnel problem, right? The guy who ran against the DA before me, who was more than qualified, he had 23 years as a prosecutor, prosecuting murder cases, you name it, everything. He worked under the DA, and it became so hostile that he decided to run, because everyone was saying, we need to get the hell out of here, or we need to get rid of this DA. This is not tenable. We can't work in these conditions. And the DA refused to acknowledge it. I mean, if you have a boss as an attorney, I never worked for a healthy law firm until I worked at the firm I work at now. Most law firms are pretty toxic. But when you have prosecutors exiting offices after being yelled and screamed at in tears, and having to go and try a case in tears, that's not appropriate. That's not helpful or productive. But this is what has led to the decrease in overall employment in the office and the capabilities of the DA to actually prosecute. And so these are all compounding issues.
And getting to that real quick, has that led to a issue of more and more defendants winning trials because the quality of their staff has gone down?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay, well,
I don't think so.
that's actually
It's led to a
surprising.
decrease in overall trials. So you
Oh,
have defendants who are just getting off. They don't even have to go
oh,
to trial. That's my
okay.
point.
Well, I know some, but the ones who decide, screw it, I'm gonna go to trial.
Oh yeah, the
Are they
quality of
still?
prosecution is decreased. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely, because they don't have time to get proper training, right? You know as much as I do. You can be buried in 150 cases at one time on your desk and
Mhm.
never learn to be a proper litigator. Sometimes you need to poke your head up above water and breathe to learn different principles, different techniques of
Mhm.
litigation, especially when it comes to oral argument, which is, I'm proud to say, my specialty. So I mean I've secured every single win this. I have lost in 2 hearings this entire year, and I've
Oh, that's
had
nice.
over 100 hearings. So,
I have not had that record, so
well, you're in criminal law, so
yeah, but still, I mean, just in general, that's actually really good. Congratulations on that.
thank you. But
Um,
I don't credit it to me. I credit it to the training system and the system that we've implemented in our office that allows lawyers to learn how to be a good and
hmm.
competent lawyer.
Well, okay, well, Danny's partner, whoever, congratulations on.
He's
Also,
great, and he gets all the credit in
big
the
project.
world. He really is great.
Yeah, and before we
Even
get
though
too
I'm
far,
leaving his office for a few months.
because I have a bunch more stuff. I got a couple of super chats and things. Brandon, let's go, Brandon, for $4.99. Thank you. Is saying this is a bold oil. This is a bold oil and vinegar concoction. Let's see how it plays out, Cotton. Thank you. This is who we are. I saw this earlier. Did you know Nikki Haley when you're at Raytheon?
She used to work at Raytheon?
I don't. Well, did you? Well, I don't know who you knew there. So
I knew a lot of people, but I was
uh,
in global trade
okay.
regulations, so I don't know if she was in the boring
Can
side.
you hook me up with stuff from Raytheon? I mean,
I wish I could hook myself up with stuff
I
from
just stuff falls
Raytheon.
off trucks all the time. I mean,
I mean,
just
if
just
they
tell-
would
just
have
tell them it's going to Ukraine.
if they would have paid me fairly and given me a fair offer, I would still be at Raytheon.
Okay. Legal vices for 10,000 wands. Not Wang,
Ooh,
won.
I think that's what, $100?
No, I think it's like $10.
Hold on. Yes, it is $10.
I was going by the color more than anything.
Sorry, I'm like, wait, yes. Sorry. I'm dyslexic and I struggle with numbers already.
Oh. Well, thank you, by the way, Jeff. Saying two of my favorite peeps, Madman Sean and my girl Dani, and Salt Lake County's DA is an absolute dick.
Jeff would know. Jeff
I'll leave
Jeff
that one
dealt
alone.
with
That
him
can be
in law
interpreted.
school.
Oh, Jeff knows him?
Mhm.
Oh.
Yep. And Jeff's from Utah, so he's pretty tuned in.
Well,
This is
yeah.
the capital city, so.
Well, I mean, it's like the only city really in Utah, though, isn't it? So,
No, the Mormons have created their utopia in Provo too. So you can't count out Utah County. And then
okay.
you have Park City, right, which is full of the everyone, the globalists and the liberal types.
Gotta get the globalists out of Park City, Dani. That's good. That's a campaign you got to run on.
Well, we have 15
Klaus
minutes.
Schwab, you're not welcome in Salt Lake City.
We have 15-minute cities here. As a matter of fact, the World Economic Forum has eyed Utah to be and Salt Lake City to be one of their focal points and their showcase.
Exactly.
15-minute
You need
cities.
to be like.
It's concerning. No, I really do. I need to run for office again. I know.
Yes. Then Jim Satala, member for 10 months. Thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate that. He says, I've been a member longer than a full-term New York abortion.
Oh, so a post-birth abortion. Welcome.
And then Kimbo says, Dani, if you want to start an AI feed account, hit me up.
I could do that on my own, Kimbo, but thank you. I appreciate
He's just trying to help you with the revenue streams.
I appreciate the concern.
Yes. Okay. So I did have a question, though, kind of going back to when you talked about when you ran. You said, they came to you and asked you, like, okay, well, if you pay for half my filing fee, I'll go do it. You're married, right?
Yes.
So you came home, you're like, so did you come home, talk to your husband, like, so guess what happened today? And or
this is hilarious. So I was actually already home. I had just finished up a long day at work. helping the county council actually evade another mask mandate that the Salt Lake County mayor was trying to implement. That actually 2020 and the deprivation of our rights here in Salt Lake County was another huge reason I wanted to run, because we had the DA instead of prosecuting drug dealers who were on the side of the road, literally dealing drugs in front of the DA's office, they were more interested in freaking prosecuting little old ladies who were being charged with criminal trespass for trying to see their doctor without their mask on to get an exception so they don't have to wear the mask.
Oh, wow. Well, that's...
Yeah. So priorities, right? Anyway, so I had come home from a long day of work and I was exhausted, but I get this phone call from my boss and she's giggling. She's just besides herself giggling. And I'm like, what are you giggling about? And she goes, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And I was like, sure. She's like, are you alone? And I go, yeah. She goes, I'm here with this other councilman. He wants to talk to you. And I'm like, why are you giggling? What is going on? And so he gets on, he goes, I have this crazy idea. What do you think? And he picks winners, generally speaking. I was his bad pick, I guess. But he goes, what do you think about running for DA? And before I thought about it, I said, okay, are you going to pay half the filing fee? And he goes, sure. I said, deal. I'll be in tomorrow. And then he goes, are you sure you don't want to think about it? And I go, well, yeah, I should probably ask my husband. Can I ask my husband and call you guys back? And he goes, sure, you don't have to call back. I was like, I'll call you right back. So I hang up the phone and I go downstairs and my husband's there and my in-laws happen to be in town from South Korea. And I quickly tell him, I'm like, hey, babe, I want to run for DA. What do you think? Like, I got this call from, he goes, yes, absolutely. Yes. And he was celebrating. My in-laws were celebrating. They were so excited for me to run. So I called him back and I let him know and I was in.
So this is a question I was going to actually, I thought about this one before and you kind of touched on it. You know, your husband's from South Korea. His in-laws, I mean, so your in-laws are South Korean. I know that, you know, obviously he was happy, but in South Korea, is that considered like an honorable thing necessarily to be going into politics or running up for office? Or I mean, because South Korea had like a military dictatorship and they had not a nice history up until like the late 80s. So I was just curious.
And some would argue they still have a nasty history when it comes to political office. But what I will say, I mean, some would say, everyone would say that. I don't know of a president in South Korea whose life didn't end or whose career didn't end with them self-deleting or sitting in jail. So
or getting killed by North Korean terror squads.
Sure. Yes. And so there's or the CIA, right? So there is a
yes, that one may have been the CIA.
Yeah. So there's a long history though of democracy and very vocal democracy in Korea that we don't have here. They're very good, generally speaking, about holding their politicians accountable. Generally speaking, now in the past they weren't, right? They had dictators, but now there's a lot more interest in these things. But the current president of Korea got his start as a DA, a county DA.
Okay.
And he had never held political office besides being DA, and he ran and he became president. So there's a lot of respect, not just for attorneys in Korea, but specifically prosecutors in Korea are seen sort of as the moral pillars of the community, which is not something I would give title to most DAs in the United States.
Yeah, I was just curious. I didn't know how they viewed it over there, but that's nice. So they weren't just like, oh, our son's cheering, so we're going to be nice to her too.
Oh, no, they were beyond thrilled. They were my number one supporters. I mean, I had my sister-in-law came for the 4th of July with her daughter to help me walk the parades because I had 4 back-to-back parades. I had to walk.
I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that question about some of that stuff.
Okay, yeah. I mean, let's get into the practical stuff. We talked like 30,000 feet stuff.
So Nico says, what about best Korea, though?
Best Korea?
North Korea is the best. You've never heard North Korea is the best Korea, their propaganda?
Oh, I haven't, but poor North Korean people.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if you can hear the dog barking. I'm sorry.
I can, but that's okay. I told my husband not to leave the house and to take care of mine for a while because.
Okay. So obviously your family, was your family, did you let your family, like, how were they pretty receptive to it, or?
Well, so I don't really have a dad per se. So I don't have like my biological dad basically abandoned us when I was like 14 or
Mm,
15. He's not well mentally speaking.
mm.
He was very abusive growing up. So I don't have a very close relationship with my biological father.
If
Um
I'm asking stuff and you don't want to talk about it, you
no,
don't.
no, no, no. I
Please
talk about
don't
it
feel.
frequently because I was homeless as a result. My whole family was, and that's when I started singing, and I was able to make enough money to put my family in a home, in a rental that I rented when I was 15. I mean, it's just like it was. I went through the school of hard knocks, and most people don't know that about me, and so I have no shame in saying that I was a victim of DV growing up, and I'm grateful for the mentors in my life who helped me overcome that history, overcome that past.
Mhm,
But I always say that because I have often a lot of people who think that I'm naive because of my age and because of my skin tone. And they don't understand that I was homeless. I did have to fight for food. I stole food frequently from if you go to the hotels, I was living in Branson. So the hotels have free continental breakfasts every morning. And that's how we got our food in the morning. And then we would go to the rec center to take showers if we could afford it that day. Usually, though, if we asked, the local like truck stops would let us use it for
mhm,
free because we were kids basically,
mhm,
and they felt bad for us. But I know what it's like to see human trafficking every day, to see violence every day, to see rampant drug use in shelters every day. I understand why people don't go to shelters. Trust me, I didn't either. Okay.
yes.
The police don't enter shelters. And the
Most people
law,
don't like going to shelters.
yeah, and there is truth that there are people who are above the law. Well, guess what? There's a ton of people who live below the law too, and they live below the protection of the law. And it is terrifying when you have, white supremacists and actual racists out there targeting you when you're on the street because no one knows who you are. No one can figure out if you're the victim of a crime. And frankly, this is terrible to say, but the system doesn't care about you. And that is a travesty. They claim to care about you, but in reality, they care about lining their pocketbooks, right? So
Mhm.
every charity I know basically fundraises for the charity.
Well, that's the nature of it. Yeah, you
Right.
got you got the overhead costs first.
Yeah, of course. And so I come from a very different background as compared to most attorneys, let alone people who are seeking public
Mhm,
office like DA. Um, and I had a unique experience with DAs growing up. I usually was on the defendant's side,
mhm,
and me arguing with the DA at like 18 and 15 and
mhm,
telling them, because in Missouri under a DV, it used to be that if there was a DV, both parties were automatically put in jail.
mhm,
So both parties were arrested, and I had to convince them to let my mom out of jail, right? So
mhm,
there was a lot to this. And anyway, my mom was sick. She was still recovering from COVID. She almost died from COVID, and she was living in St. George, which is about 3.5 hours from here. So she couldn't really contribute a
mhm.
lot. And you know, the rest of my family, they're working class folks, right? So they don't have time or money or energy to
Oh,
spend.
yeah, but I mean, what
Yeah.
was their reaction when they were just like, right on, or do they? I was just curious, if they
They
were
were sort of,
like,
they
good
were
for you, good
supportive,
luck.
like, "Good for
Yeah,
you, good
okay,
luck." Yeah. It
okay,
it wasn't quite as enthusiastic as my husband's family.
okay.
Yeah. Like, my in-laws, my brother-in-law gave me
Mhm.
$1,000. My other brother-in-law, who doesn't have a lot of money to spare right now,
You're
gave
taking
me
foreign,
1,000.
dark South Korean money.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
They're both
combat
US
George.
citizens, so they were allowed to. But they were incredible. Like
Mhm,
I said, they came out and marched with me and helped me hand out flyers late into the evening. I'm very, very grateful to my in-laws.
sure. Did you think about trying to get, like, you know, Sim Gill is going to throw out his George Soros card, and you're like, I've got a more powerful one, and throw it down your Raytheon card, and be like,
Oh, that would have
I've
been
got the
cool.
I've got the power of Raytheon and Israel behind me.
Oh, I wish. But it's okay. Funny story. Pull up my website. You'll see in the about me, I have a picture of me in front of a menorah. And everybody's like, "Oh, you're Jewish?" And I'm like, "No, I was invited to the lighting ceremony and I went, and it was a good picture of me, so I included it in my photos."
What is it again? It's DA
It's
for DA, right?
DA for DA, but it's the numeral 4.
Yes.
Like, yeah, number
Yeah.
4.
Okay. All right. Here, let's.
I don't know if it's still up. I think I pay for it. You can
Well,
share it on the big screen.
all right. Hold on here. Yeah, I gotta pull it up. Okay. So, oh,
If you go
somebody.
to about,
Mike says he voted for you.
thank you, Mike. That's so sweet. That's awesome.
So we go to about. Okay.
And you scroll down,
Okay.
and
Oh,
there
there
it
you go.
is. So everybody thought I was Jewish for the longest time. But and it was so funny because every time someone would be like, "Oh, you're racist," I'd be like, "You sure about that?
Yeah.
You sure about that? You want to go that way?" But I mean, if you go to endorsements, I was endorsed by the Utah State Governor. I was
Mhm.
endorsed by the AG. I was endorsed by every single police union that matters, right? That's in my
Mhm.
jurisdiction. I was endorsed
In the Salt
by,
Lake City Police Union.
yes, Salt Lake City Police Union. And now that was huge because the Salt Lake Union had never endorsed a non-incumbent before.
Now, when that happened to you, um, can I guess I'll start there because once you started, you're trying to get a hold of, trying to get endorsed. Did they find out, like, did they come to you and said, "Hey, we heard you're running," or did you go to them? Kind of how did that work out? Because that's actually a really big one typically to get the police to support you.
So I went to them hat in hand and I told them everything I just told your audience and you. I was very transparent with them. I said, "Look, I'm I'm not going to treat you differently than any other defendant." And they said, "Great, that's all we want." And I said, "Great. I also want to implement a policy where we're working in the same offices. I
Hmm.
want your investigators in the office with our prosecutors." And they're I told him what some of my plans were, what my platform was. And one of the officers
Hmm.
who was there, his eyes kind of got a little watery.
Hmm.
And he started telling me his story and how many defendants and suspects he arrests
Hmm.
and how many times he ends up showing up to a homicide in
Hmm.
at that same address later. And how devastating it is for them psychologically,
Hmm.
and how there are no, I mean, they have some resources, but they're very limited. And they have all this public ire. And I was the first one to say, "Hey, you guys are heroes.
Hmm.
By and large, you have the heart of heroes. You want to do the right thing. I want to help you do the right thing. I want you to help me. And we need to help each other do the right thing." Sometimes the right thing means securing a conviction. Sometimes the right thing means dismissing charges.
Hmm.
But you need the police's involvement. You need their backing. You need to be partners with them because if you're not, first, there's a lack of check on the police because now you're relying on their attorneys, their union attorneys to contact you and to get
Yes.
information.
Hmm. Well, there's that, and then if they don't like you, they don't file things because they don't do work. And then I know, for example, I've seen it in out this way when there's been tiffs. They don't show up for court. They
That's what
don't
I'm
do.
saying.
Yeah.
Mhm. Same, and it's
So,
happening here. And the people who lose out on that most aren't just the defendants, it's the victims.
yes.
And
In the community.
it's the community. And these
Hmm.
police get so discouraged so quickly that they're dropping like flies and you can't pay them enough. And the county sheriff is also an elected position here. And the county sheriff and the DA's office should be working together to try and equalize out pay or figure out some kind of program so that people aren't stealing from other people's jurisdictions. But that's what's happening here. I have police officers who are driving all the way to St. George every week to do their job in St. George because they're going to get paid more there and they don't have to worry about some crazy nut job DA riding up their ass about writing a speeding ticket.
Hmm.
I mean, it's that bad. And so I went to the police unions. The first thing I did is I called the former candidate
Hmm.
and I said, "Hey, can you get me in touch with some other DAs, like-minded DAs?" And so he had me contact a few DAs in Idaho he was friends with. And then they referred me to some in Texas and Oklahoma.
Were you able to speak to ones in Utah, or was that a bit of an issue as far as
At first, I was not able to.
Okay.
So I spoke to these other DAs and I got some ideas in terms of policy and platform and reform and what worked well for them and what didn't. Because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to sell on the public this dream idea and then not be able to deliver. So I didn't want to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to decrease crime and be tough on crime unless I actually had a plan to do that. Because I take myself seriously when it comes to politics. When it comes to, YouTube and having a good time, I'm just having a good time. But when it comes to my political ambition and what I do in terms of public policy, I take it very seriously because I've been on the receiving end of bad public policy more times than I can count. I'm willing to bet 99%. Anybody who flies and has to deal with the TSA understands what bad public policy looks like.
Yes.
So I had contacted all these DAs, got their opinions, and then they referred me to the police unions. First to the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police for Utah. And I reached out to them and they said, let's do fundraisers for you. And I want to introduce you to each chapter and get endorsements from each chapter. So that's what we did. So we went to West Valley, everyone in the county. And then the Salt Lake Police Union is separate from the FOP. And it took a while, a lot of massaging, a lot of me showing up for parades, a lot of me showing up for events, a lot of me showing up for doing a lot of ride-alongs, right? At night. I would you can volunteer. By the way, you guys, I highly recommend this. Sign up to do a ride-along with your local cops and your local police. It is an eye-opening experience as a regular old person. It is eye-opening. It's enlightening. And it really is, if you want to hold people accountable, that's the best way to do it. Just go for a freaking ride along. Cops tend to behave well when you're in the car with them, when you're with them, right? And it's a way of seeing the way that police interact with your community and sort of getting a temperature gauge. But I went on these ride-alongs. I got to know all these officers from SWAT to, highway patrol to you name it. People working in the jail, everyone.
Okay.
Because you kind of have to, right? Prosecution doesn't really end with the securing the conviction. You also have APMP, you have parole hearings, you have parole later, and whether or not, you're going to recommend their release or their parole
probation too. Yeah,
probation. You have all of these different things. So I tried my best to try and find every area where the DA spent money, where the budget had money going, I would go to those. Each and every one of those organizations.
Yes, if it's an unintentional ride along, call me.
Or if it's a
yes.
Sorry, yeah, definitely.
Yes. So and that's, you mentioned you having to go to, so I don't think people don't understand this. When you're a politician, especially during election season, you're going to the fish fries, you're going to the Moose Lodge, you're going to the Elks, you're going to the Women's League, you're going, everywhere there's something going on. You're buying that kid selling, crappy lemonade, you're eating those really crappy cookies. You're like, whoa, these are great. And you're like, let me tell you about, what also was great, my platform. And, doing that, routinely. How was that? And like, obviously, however you want to phrase it, but the thing is though, those things all happen at night. So like every night, that's what I'm doing. I've got somewhere to go, or some nights I've got 3 or 4 things to go. And how was that? Was that pretty kind of, after a while, it got kind of grueling, I assume, right?
I was so blessed, and I still feel blessed that God gave me the personality I have, because for me, it was the ride of a life. I had the time of my life. I love meeting new people. I loved educating the public on the role of the DA. I love spending time with new people, getting to know their stories, hearing them and listening to them, and then, being able to share their stories with their permission, and being able to highlight the community members in my community who are doing heroes work every day, who are out there making my community as wonderful as it is. I am so blessed to have been able to meet all of those people and to get to know them. And yeah, some days were hard, right? When you're out knocking doors at 6 p.m. and the sun's already set because it's now getting into winter and it was kind of cold. That was hard when you get sick. And like I had a huge kidney stone that I passed on July 3rd, and it was awful. I thought I was dying, and they wanted to take me to the emergency room because I had to call 911, and it was a whole thing anyway. And it was really embarrassing because I came down the stairs and I was half nude because I was trying to get in the shower to go to this event. And it hit me. And those who know what a kidney stone is like, it hits you. It kind of builds, but you sort of just ignore it, and then it hits you hard. And then it's just this reverberating pain. Anyway, the police officer, or not the police, the firemen show up, and I'm like, don't look at me. And they're like, what's your name? And I was like, I don't want to tell you. I was like, because I'm probably going to meet with your chief. Don't look at me. And so that was hard because I then had to walk 4 parades the next.
Well, yeah, you mentioned 4 parades, and I'm assuming the 4th of July in Salt Lake City is not exactly nice. I mean, it's nice, but it's hot.
It's extremely hot. And when you're recovering from a kidney stone, you need to stay very, very, very hydrated. And I was fortunate that I had so many people who believed in me that I was able to have my team of volunteers walking a parade on the south side of the valley at the same time that I was walking in Salt Lake. Because some of the parades were at the same time, start time. And then we would just like rush across the valley to make the next parade. And then we just like hop out of the car, and I had this big megaphone, and I would just walk down the street yelling my platform at people and handing out candy. And it was really a magical, I hate to say magical, but it was magical because it was everything that I wanted to be the politician I wanted to vote for. That was my goal. And that's still my goal, is to be a leader in my community that I'd be proud of saying I was a leader in the community.
Now, you kind of touched on this. I mean, I was gonna say, why don't you think of just like slap a magnet on the side of your car and just like I'll sit in the sunroof and wave at everybody.
I had to do that for one parade, and that parade was awful. So I had some weird form of COVID where it was like a stomach problem.
Oh.
Yeah. And I had to use the restroom every like 2 minutes to take a number 2.
Oh.
And so I've never asked my husband to speed during the entire campaign because our car is covered in magnets and stickers and everything. So I was like, oh no, I have to speed to get to the bathroom. So we sped, and sure enough, I got an email on Facebook from some rando who was like, I saw you speeding today. I'm not voting for you. And I'm like, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. Like, if that's the one person that does me, and I guess it's fine.
Okay. Well, that's the other thing too, is, if there's days where you're like, yeah, I speed, or I don't know if Utah, if you're allowed to use a cell phone while you're driving, whatever laws there are, even if it's no jaywalking, no, like you have to look like a monk. You have to look like you're one of the Mormon elders. Like you can't, I've done nothing wrong. I do nothing wrong, because otherwise people will.
Yeah. Your life is under a microscope, and it was so bad for me mentally, that, and not bad at the time, it wasn't bad, but after I lost the election, I went on Nick's stream, because I had always wanted to be on Nick's stream anyway, and he invited me on, and I remember making a very unintentionally making a crass joke. Like, I got set up. Okay. It was a setup. I fell for a stupid setup, but I was like, oh no, it's going to hit the news. Like, in my head, I almost vomited that night. Cause I was like, like, I was fine personally, but then I'm like, but then all these volunteers and all of these victims who relied on me, now it reflects poorly. And they're going to be like, aren't you glad you didn't vote for Dani Ahn? Like, in my head, that's where it was. And it wasn't until the next morning that my husband turned to me and goes, honey, you're not important anymore. And I went, oh,
yeah, it's over.
Okay. Like, that was hard. That was hard.
Oh, really?
It was hard to be a representative because I wanted to be a voice for victims, and I wanted to be a platform for victims, and to go from that to being a regular person with my own private life or, you know, a YouTuber was a very, very quick shift. And so psychologically that was a little hard, but I've adjusted since. I don't really care. I mean, my feeling is if Vivek can do a live stream and use the restroom during a serious discussion with the most powerful people on earth, I'm pretty sure I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so, and that was, so you had volunteers, like, how'd you end up having a volunteer staff? Were you able to find people you knew, or was it people who were like, oh, I believe in your cause, or I guess, how did that all kind of come about?
That's exactly what
Recruiting your
happened.
staff.
So I strongly believe that if I could have paid people, I would have. I didn't have a campaign manager. I looked for campaign managers at first, and then I realized I could do everything that they wanted to do for me. So like I found a guy to set up my website. I wrote all my own platform. I wrote my own script for the you can actually play, if you want, you can play the video from my campaign. Just turn off the music because you'll get copyright striked. But it is like, I wrote that. I designed that with the producer. It just so happened I found this guy from Hollywood who was like, I love you. I love your campaign. Like, I'm from San Francisco. I don't want Salt Lake to be San Francisco. I want to help you. So he did it for a really discounted price. It was only like $2,000. And that's when, like, this sounds so stupid.
You're talking about these videos?
Yeah. So if you click on that, on the big one in the center, or where is it? I think it stopped playing. Yeah, that one. Elect Danielle Ahn for Salt Lake County District Attorney. So you can expand that and it will show people. But we filmed this all in Salt Lake. And I think it was shocking to people to see how decrepit Salt Lake has become. All of the statistics, all of the research, everything I did, all of it. So once I started doing it, though, I went to speak at the county convention for the Republican convention. I was invited to be a speaker. And I came up and I gave a speech. I got the whole crowd riled up. And I had floods of people coming and being like, how can I help you? Take my money. Like, what can we do to help you win? And once I started to get endorsements, that's where more money started to be donated. And then I only spent what I had. So I wouldn't, you know, people were always like, well, why don't you go and get merch? Why don't you go buy more t-shirts? We want more t-shirts. And it's like, because I don't have George Soros funding me, but I was able to fundraise up to $250 some odd $1,000 within the course of 8 months, which is huge.
A lot of money.
And my opponent started with a bank account of like 500,000. He ran through that really quickly. He had to fundraise another 500,000 to win. So $1 million basically is what my seat cost that I was running for.
So, I mean, I was going to say in that video, you should have been like, look, here's how bad it is. I'm going to walk up to this gentleman. Sir, can I buy some crack? Here's $20. Thank you. Look, I bought crack. Then you can be like, look, here's how bad it is.
He prosecutes me and I'm now ineligible to run.
No, you could say, look, you're coming after me. But that's when you know, look, and I'm going to show you how bad it is too. Look what I can do. You just load up a pistol and just pop, just like,
you know what drove people
no one
nuts?
cares.
I recorded a video of someone who was high on crack while I was out there waving my sign. He was like fumbling and falling into traffic. And I was recording him before he started falling into traffic. I was just recording him when he was like zombied, you know, the lean. He was just leaning. And I was recording and I was like, you guys, this is happening here. This is happening here. It is a problem. And I'm in the south side of the valley where it's super safe and upscale. And there are crack addicts on the street here. I was like, look at this guy. He's a freaking zombie. And then he started to walk into the street. And I was like, oh shit. So I put my phone away, pulled him out of the road. Okay. I was like, hey buddy, what's going on? You know, you having a hard time? And he's like, oh, I lost my stuff. And we went and found all of his stuff. He had dropped it. And someone had already called the police. And I said, hey, what's going on? He's like, oh, my friend OD'd last week. And I'm really going through a hard time. I was like, hey, it's okay, buddy. So I sat down with him until the police showed up. And I got lambasted like hell for that.
Because you put the video up and like, how dare you use this man as your prop?
Yep. Yep. So I mean, God forbid I saved the guy, right?
Did your opponent do that, or was it the
Yeah.
rest of like everybody else?
Oh no, the Salt Lake Tribune is notoriously pro-Democrat.
I figured the media would be after you, but I didn't know if your opponent was actually doing it or he just sat back and.
No, he played the Biden campaign strategy, just hide in the basement. I went up to shake his hand actually, while we were doing competing interviews, because he would never debate me. And so the closest I could get to a debate was a competing interview. And I went up to shake his hand. He literally ran away. My biggest regret for the entire campaign is that I didn't pull out my cell phone and film him running away from me.
Hmm.
So
So there was never a debate.
no.
Did you ever? Did he always just say like, I'm not gonna give you the time of day, or was it just
No,
never a
he just
response?
wouldn't answer the phone.
Okay. And
He just ignored me.
in the newspaper, the news wasn't like, whatever CBS or the local stations weren't like, we're gonna do a debate or anything like that.
Nope, they offered, he refused.
Mm.
The law school offered.
You should have told him I'll do it, and then just show up and be like, my colleague, my opponent here can explain his position and just let it. I don't know if you thought about doing it that way or not.
The only person who offered a debate stage with my opponent, besides like the women's league. Now the women's league actually offered, and we were set up to do a debate, and he didn't show up. So, but with
ghosted him. Wow. Okay.
Oh yeah, he just ghosted, which was funny, and I laughed, but it wasn't covered in the news, obviously, because then that would make him look bad. Even though I had ran stories about his declination letters on these sexual assault cases and on violent crime cases, and the ABA, the National ABA, actually wrote a condemnation of him for not prosecuting these cases, and it was bad. Our own appeals court has condemned him for not prosecuting cases timely, leading to some children being re-victimized as a result of his inaction. And so I had all the ammunition in the world, but the one person I would not sit up onto a debate stage with was the ACLU. They reached out to offer a debate, and I said, I would rather rot in hell than be on a debate stage hosted by your organization. You are anti-American, antithetical to the Constitution.
Did you tell them to quote that?
Yes, I did. I said, you can run that in the papers. I hate the ACLU. What you have become is a travesty, and you are a disgusting organization. I do not support you, and I will not share any of the acclaim, any of the fame that I have earned with you. So that's a position I stand by today. F you, ACLU.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Real quick, J-Rock's been a member for 1 month. Thank you, J-Rock. Is saying Sean was a DV victim for 28 minutes. Thanks, Nick.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, if you notice, my glasses were flickering quite a bit. I was doing my own thing. When my name got answered, I checked back in. It was like being married again. So
I didn't make a joke. I fell for a trap. It was a trap.
Yeah. Well, Isaac Baruch's wholesome Gabagool art for $5. Thank you, Isaac. Is saying, Danny, I didn't make a joke about. I'm not pouring a drink. It's a school night for me. But I'll lick the bottle real quick. And then dogs. And even if I did, it was funny, and you know it, right, Danny?
Not funny.
Answer the question, Danny.
Not funny. I feel like Nancy Pelosi, like I think that was probably, of all of the funny things that I love that politicians do, when Nancy Pelosi got caught going in without a mask to get her hair done during 2020. I'm sorry. I fell for a setup. Completely devoid of like human emotion. I'm pretty sure she's a lizard in a skin suit for real.
Yeah. So, and speaking of setups though, while you were running, were you always on like, if people approached you or contacted you, you're like, is this person a setup? Is this them running an op on me?
Every time I had to be very careful. but not too careful, because I'm very fortunate that the public persona I had when I was running was who I was. I was living a very clean life at the time. I hardly drank.
Living a clean life at the time. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, I drink now.
Well, I thought you were gonna tell me, you're like, yeah, now it's just fentanyl all day long.
No fentanyl.
Oh,
But like, I mean, in terms of my personal life, everything
Ah.
was really in order. I didn't have time to relax, and so it wasn't like I was putting on a show for the public and then privately, doing something else. Everything I've said publicly, I say privately, and vice versa. So that wasn't too bad.
Okay.
But I always expected that something was a setup. I always expected I was being recorded. And I took my own advice that I give all my clients. Speak as though you're being recorded and write as though you're writing to a judge.
You mentioned that the Salt Lake City Tribune was hostile to you, but like, were the local like news, the TV stations, the radio, were they hostile too, or were they more ambivalent?
So Fox News sort of was ambivalent, just ignored the race. The Salt Lake Tribune was extremely negative. And fortunately, their first piece on me was not a hit piece, so I appreciated that. But then they entertained this op-ed that was written by a bunch of DAs who were friends with or worked with Sim Gill, 15 DAs, where they repeatedly said that my campaign was laughable. And I don't know, between 16 attorneys, why they couldn't come up with a better adjective or a more creative insult, but that was basically it. And so I was fortunate that they only ran one hit piece on me, really. And it was in regards to that video.
Okay.
But KUTV, which does a lot of investigative and undercover work, had been trying to get answers from the DA's office on a multitude of issues for years. Well, I got a call from one of their reporters, and she said, "Hey, I'm doing a story on this. Can I borrow some of the records you've already received? Would you mind sharing that?" "Yeah, sure. Why not? Here." And just to follow up on stories, well, he was so upset that she dared to question him that he had one of his attorneys call and scream at her late in the evening and say, "You're never getting another interview with the DA's office." And since that time, there was a press conference just recently where the DA reiterated he refused to answer any questions from her ever again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brave man. Brave man.
Very brave, so transparent, so brave, so fresh. So that's that. But the money comes when you believe in what you're doing, and when people believe in what you're doing, and you're able to sell an idea that you plan on actually enacting.
And it sounds like you're saying that there wasn't really, even though it sounds like a good idea, there was never any way you're convincing the Salt Lake City Tribune, like, "Oh, wait, Dani's actually a nice girl. Like, we're totally wrong."
I tried. I mean,
So you did try to reach out to them, like, "Look, see, I'm feeding puppies at the shelter. Like, how bad could I be?"
Well, I tried. I went to every single community meeting anywhere. I was there at every event. The news actually refused to run my interviews. They would tell me that they'd run them, and then they never did. So I would go to community events about cleaning up the community or a park or, community policing, and they refused to run me. So
they're like, "Oh yeah, we love your stuff." And then you're just like, "Oh, and now the weather." It's like, you're like, "Wait, what? When do I go?"
Yeah. I mean, there was one incident where Sim Gill out of nowhere decided to attack Sean Reyes, our AG, for being involved in the Trump litigation and on his off time. So he has vacations. He went on vacation to go help Trump. And oh my gosh. So he came and he's like, "You should maybe do your job and be less focused on Trump or something." And I was like, "Speaking of doing your job," and so I just threw in that tweet, and I got an interview as a result. They reached out to me and they were like, "Do you have any comments?" And I was like, "Yeah, why don't you tell the DA to do his job? Why don't you ask him why there's been these increases? Why haven't you asked him this? Why haven't you been holding him accountable? Isn't that your job as the media? Where have you been? My questions aren't for the DA. My questions are for you." And obviously they didn't appreciate that. So, there you have that.
Yeah, well, I did want to bring this up real quick. Ammo is currency for $5 says you should go on Sniper's stream and rant about the Tribune. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. I'll talk to you about who Sniper is, but he's a guy in Utah and he has nothing but he has nothing but love for the Salt Lake City Tribune. He loves them. They're the #1 newspaper in his eyes.
It's insane to me that they have tax exemption under a 501c3.
Oh, they're run. No, okay.
Mm-hmm. They're a nonprofit, so make sense.
Yeah. Salty Balls real quick though saying, did you know you could sleep with all the minors but never the minors? It's very confusing.
I disavow.
Yeah. And then been there, done that. Well, actually, I mean, like, so.
Oh, I love been there, done that.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question, been there, done, but I want to get to the. So you're going through all of this. The election's picking up, and like you said, so far it's just been a blast, and it's all. I'm assuming it's kind of going like a million miles an hour, but it's you're keeping up. When you get to like election day, kind of like, you went into it, and I guess spoiler alert, Dani did not win, but going into it, like, what were you thinking? Like, how were you feeling? If you don't mind asking, if I don't mind me asking.
I felt so incredibly grateful, and I still do. I honestly prayed to God. I said, "Hey, look, I did this because I felt like I should. I felt like I was doing what you would want me to do. Help me to be grateful and to accept with grace whatever the result may be, because at this point, it's out of my hands. I've done everything I can. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. Maybe my role was just to put a big ding in this asshole's armor. Maybe that was it. Maybe it was to bankrupt him so he can't run for AG now, right? Whatever it was, whatever the purpose
so that was is that his ultimate goal?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I think he's looking at running for AG now. So whatever the purpose was of shining light on him, fighting like hell, trying to get attention on these cases, trying to get things moving. Ironically, all of the cases that I brought up had movement on their cases almost hours after we broadcast their stories.
So there's defense attorneys sitting there saying, don't talk about my case, don't talk about my case, don't talk about my case.
I guarantee it. Well, public defenders, not defense attorneys.
Oh, a lot of these are public defender cases that were languishing.
A lot of them, yeah. So I was grateful going into it. It was hard because I went to vote.
Brimstone says apparently God meant for you to run a marathon, not run forever.
I guess so. But there's anyway, my husband went to vote, or I went to vote with a group of friends, and all of my friends, a lot of my friends at least, were from Venezuela, and they had just gotten citizenship. And I had the great pleasure and honor of being there for their first vote when they voted for me. And we were celebrating that. And I remember sorry, I didn't think I was going to get emotional on stupid YouTube on friggin' Sean's stream, but I looked over through the glass at the library and I could see my husband sitting there so proud, but I could see his face just kind of drop a little because my friend's son had asked him why he wasn't going to go vote. And it was very conflicting because I'm in the process of appealing my husband's USCIS decision on his citizenship. And so it's really tough. It's really tough when you have people who are getting screwed over by the legal system. And you're sitting there, a patriot, trying to fix the problems, but your own husband can't vote for you. That's hard. That's hard. So that was hard. I probably shouldn't have said that. I mean, he'll be a citizen soon. It's just, it's insane to me, the barriers to entry that we create for legal migration. And then meanwhile, we take on a bunch of people who don't speak English.
How good your husband's Spanish?
That's what I told him. I said, just hop across the border and claim asylum. You'll be fine. A bunch of Chinese are doing it. Why not you? And, his position is, I love
He's
this
like, I
country.
can't swim across the river.
Oh, it effing sucks, bro. It's worse than that because he loves this country so much. Like his dream. Ah, so that was hard.
Mm.
So going into the night, my husband's like, stop crying. Like, what if you win and now you're like a mess? And I went to the Republican Party they were holding because Mike Lee was up for re-election. And so he hosted a huge party with all the other state Republicans. And
when we're talking, guys, we're talking about just this past November. So November 22.
yeah, and the first vote batch that came in was in-person voting. And so I won all the in-person voting. And then the second batch that came through was all...
The fortification happened.
Then all the second batches were mail-in voting. And then I started to lose, which was fine because they weren't closing, they hadn't closed anything. Yes. And I kept waiting, and they wouldn't update the website. And so it didn't update, and I was like, that's weird. And so we just went home, and I had assumed I had lost, but we really didn't know. Now, keep in mind, I was still acting as a county council advisor. So there's a bunch of Democrats who work there, and they hate my guts. So they're laughing at me, and they think this is so funny. They're like, oh, loser. And I don't care because I'm an adult, and I was just so touched by the experience and those who helped me. So it was what it was. But it got weird because a lot of my volunteers were like, hey, we want to go and observe the vote counts. And I said, okay, sure. Here's where the county clerk is offering service. You can go and observe the count. And she started to make all these weird rules about where they could stand, where they couldn't stand. They couldn't even see what was going on. They tried to ask for the voting machine rolls, which is basically a record of all of the ballots that come through, and they weren't being provided. And then it took 2 weeks to finish the count, and she would give updates.
I'm assuming the tallies had a couple where it just and then
a few of those, and it was
Wisconsin jump.
There were some odd ones where there were ballots that were just being tossed aside without explanation. And my volunteers would be like, hey, I want to challenge that ballot. Like, look at it. And it was in my favor. And there were a few of those. And so it was very odd, but I accepted gracefully the results. I had issue with the fact that the county clerk wasn't following the rules. She should have been updating every single day at a certain time, the votes from that day. And a lot of those times, the ballots that were counted that day weren't being updated. So the total vote was, but not the number of ballots that were counted. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
it shouldn't make sense, but it does.
It shouldn't make sense, but it does. And I understand mistakes happen, right? We're human beings. I say, hey, you know what? If you screwed up, that's fine. You need 2 weeks to count a vote. A little bit much, but okay. Then 2 weeks turned into 3 weeks. Okay. I begged. Really? I begged the county council to go down and watch the vote and figure out what the hell was happening. And no one did, even though that's part of their job is to go and secure the vote, to watch it. Anyway, eventually a bunch of people who had observed the vote for the county, who were very strong advocates for voter integrity, came to speak at a county council meeting. And one asshole stood up and was like, you're all a bunch of extremists, and this is why we had January 6th, and blah, 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 blah. And he went off, and I finally lost it. I stood up and I said, you know what? If you want a perfect election with 100% accuracy, and you believe that that is this election, may I refer you to China? May I refer you to Russia? May I refer you to anywhere but this country? If there is ever a time to question anything that our government does, it should be the election. Shame on you for being anti-American. Shame on you for being anti-patriotic. May you rest in peace, knowing one day that you were part of the downfall of this great country. Shame on you. And I went and I sat down, and no joke, there was applause. I have a recording of it. I'll have to show it sometime. But one of the council members, who is a total bitch, turned to my council member and was like, you need to get her under control. And that's when I said, okay, I think I've worn out my welcome in my current position. And I think it's time to move on. So at that time, I terminated my employment at the county soon after. And then I got offered a position at a civil litigator law firm, and they just do divorces. And so I've been doing divorces for a year. Yep.
So you feel like you kind of did everything, you didn't leave. You don't feel like you could have done anything else. Like you did everything you thought was necessary.
I did everything I possibly could. I don't know what else I could have done that I didn't do. I was at every event, every parade, everything all summer long. My husband was my number one supporter. He was there for me from the beginning to the end. If there's anyone I'm grateful for in this entire world, it's him. He was my light that kept me, going. And I'm really grateful.
Well, and I guess this kind of comes down to the question that, real quick, Swizgar says for $2, says, "Hey, Dani, how is your dog? If you know, you know."
He's great. Thanks for asking.
Jeff for 2,000 won, not 2,000 wangs, 2,000 wands, and not the kind you can boop with. Thank you, by the way, Jeff. Says, for Simgill's window fund, it's a thing.
He wanted $20 million for hurricane shutter blinds to be installed to protect his gorgeous windows from protesters.
$20 million?
For hurricane shutters to be installed to protect his window. He originally suggested like a something like $50 million wall to protect his building. And I was like, oh, like Trump. And then they came back with the window proposal.
That's impressive.
That's how I trolled people when I was a policy advisor. I was just like, oh, so like Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Isaac Baruch again for $2. Thank you, Isaac, is saying, Mino Abra English, best of luck to Mr. Ahn.
That's the most fucked up part. Like when I say this man, he knows more. He has seen the Constitution in person, which is more than what most citizens can say. He's more than willing to join the military. They won't let him. It's insane to me. Well, I'm sure they would probably let him, but that's no guarantee. Service should guarantee citizenship, in my opinion.
They have a lot of programs that allow that. It's they're looking for who you want, though. So if you're the right people. So
yeah, if you're an engineer of a certain type.
Yes.
Yeah, if you speak with a certain accent and you help with the interrogations of certain individuals, then yes, you can be brought across, and you can too be an American.
Or if you're working on, if you're very good with the rocket science.
I don't know, maybe because of some testing you may or may have not done. So, I mean, that's the thing is like, I'm proud that I ran. At the end of the day, those 16 attorneys can kiss my ass because they're the pussies who didn't stand up when the time came.
And I guess this is the question from Been There, Done That. And, are you running again?
Well, not for DA.
It's a 4-year office, right? So
it is.
He's 2026 is his next shot up.
Yeah, I won't run for DA again. I didn't ever want to be DA. People ask me if I wanted to run for AG, which is up for election now. I don't want to be AG. I want to be a lawmaker. I'm to the point where it's like I'm tired of messing with people. I'd much rather make deals and get really, really great legislation forward. Hopefully go through and get rid of legislation. Hopefully go through and cut budgets of certain agencies. Get rid of the federal agencies to the extent that we can. That's necessary and vital to the survival of this country. If we want our Constitution to come back, we have to get rid of the fourth branch of government now. And we need to start demanding more accountability from our politicians, from our congressmen, from our senators. We need to put into place anti-insider trading rules. You shouldn't be able to touch any of your stocks or investments while you are in public office at all. I'm a firm believer in that. And you can say, oh, well, that's an infringement. Dude, duh. You give up so much to be a public servant. You sacrifice a lot of your rights to privacy, rights to free expression. I mean, to a certain extent, actually, you do give up your rights to freedom of expression when you are working in an agency, a federal agency. You can't go posting nasty grams about your sitting president unless it's Donald Trump, right? So I'm in favor of implementing those types of laws and policies. I'm in favor of shrinking our federal government, our federal budget. Term limits would be great. Try getting everyone to sign on to that. And the risk you run in bringing a constitutional convention, because I've heard people mention that, is that you're now risking overriding hundreds of years of precedent and the Constitution.
So are you going to, is this your way of saying you're going to go rhino hunting soon? Going
Oh,
on safari in Utah? Or let's start small.
I wish I would have brought my rhino hunter shirt to this interview. So I would love to run for Romney's seat. That's a lot of money. I would love to take out Romney. I would love to run for that seat, but
not yet. Baby steps.
Baby steps. And yeah, but senator is the ultimate goal. I would like to be senator and then eventually ambassador.
Well, ambassador to where? South Korea? No, that's not fair. You got to go somewhere instead.
I
go to like Burkina Faso.
Where?
Go somewhere where your language doesn't help. So you show up, you're like, well, I don't speak Burkina Faso. So like, yeah, guys, sorry, I don't speak Bantu, but I can speak Korean.
Make it a challenge.
That's a gimme. That's easy mode.
Korea, no, it's not about easy mode. It's just, well, actually, if you want to be a corrupt ambassador, you're aiming for like Turks and Caicos in the Bahamas. Yeah. But I don't. I love Korea. I care very deeply about that nation, and I care about representing my country well while I'm there. So even now when I go to Korea, I feel like I'm kind of representing where I'm from. So I love the Korean people and the Korean Peninsula. So one day. I got to back the right president. So, and do a lot of ass kissing, and then you can get appointed to being an ambassador.
Yes. And then we got one more super chat. Unhung Hero for $2. Thank you. He says, I'm going to come. Oh, hi, Dani.
Best Trump quote. By far, best Trump quote. Thank you.
So, Little Dog
have you ever thought of running?
Little Dog says, you have my vote when you run as a fellow, I don't know, Utahn or whatever you guys call yourselves.
I've thought about running for AG. Just because I won 42% of the vote here in Salt Lake County, which is not an insignificant number. I think people think that's, nothing. That's huge.
Yes. No, yeah. And that's the thing. You did lose, but it's your first time out and you got that much. So
first time out. At the time I was 32 years old. I had no criminal prosecution experience, and I had no money, like no private investment from myself.
Yeah.
I had no experience running. I'll tell you, knowing is half the battle. So what would be nice now is I have name recognition in Salt Lake County, so I can rely on the vast majority of votes from Salt Lake County to carry me into AG. And then what's nice is the rest of the state is very Republican and very conservative. And I think I would have a really great and easy time running that race if I had the funds and the means to do it. Unfortunately, the same people who helped me with my campaign are also running.
Yeah, well, yeah, they have their aspirations too. So yeah, you're going to run into them very quickly.
Right. And so I have a rule that I don't run against those who supported me in my race. Unless I feel it's necessary.
Until you can really stab them in the back.
Yeah. I'll really stab them in the back, but only if it's necessary.
Yeah, you'll take the shots at them when you know you're not going to miss.
Exactly. Well, and that's part of it too, is you can lose one race and get the name recognition that you want and need and have some backers and people who will support you for your second race, but you can't win 2 races in a row. Look at Beto O'Rourke for an example, right?
Mhm.
So his first race for president, everybody knew who he was. He was really poised to take a senator position, and he missed. And then he ran for governor and he missed, and now no one knows who he is.
Yeah. Yes. And then Unhung here for $2 says, be the ambassador to Uganda. They will show you the way. I don't know if you get that joke.
I freaking love that meme. Part of the problem is I speak in memes so frequently that memes and references.
So you're asking though, would I ever run for office?
Yeah.
I mean, there's times where I think that would be a lot of fun. I think it'd be good, but I mean, I don't know, like that's a lot of work, and it's also work where you do kind of limit yourself in what you can do and not do. And there's also just the other issue of I guess I'm honest with myself at times. I don't know if I do have the best temperament for being in political office. That would I really be the best steward for people? I mean, like, I'd like to think, yes, I could do it, but there's also part of me that thinks, oh my God, I'll turn into like fucking Caligula or something if I run. It's like, but it's just for the school board. And it's like, you never know. That's the problem.
School boards are where all the drama happens.
Yeah.
I would never run for school board.
But I'm like, Sean, you can run for dog catcher. And then like, and before you know it, I'm, crowning myself emperor somewhere. So
you should run for, I don't know if your jurisdiction has this. Is your, what's the
No,
word?
we don't have Mormon wranglers.
No, I was going to say an undertaker, but that's not the right word.
Coroner.
Yeah,
actually, I'm pretty sure in Ohio you have to have a medical license for that.
Do you?
Yeah.
Because in Idaho you don't.
Yeah.
I learned that through the Lori Vallow trial.
Well, in Ohio too, though, most of the medical examiners, because most of the counties in Ohio are rural, are just family practitioners. And when I worked in the one county I was in, the coroner, he had his family practice, and then they gave him grant money to put in a freezer in his office because you got to store the body till they can come pick it up and take it.
They didn't have a freezer?
Well, like a mortuary style freezer, like not like a. They could have gone to like Costco and bought it like a chest freezer.
I mean, they didn't already have a freezer at the coroner's office.
There was no coroner's office because there is like he doesn't really have like an office. He has his family practice office.
I see.
And that county, like if you died and they had to do an autopsy, they had to take you to the next big city over, and it's like an hour away, and they can't always guarantee they can come pick up the body or get one out. So you might have to wait a little while before they can come pick it up and take it.
Wow. The nice thing, you just reminded me of something. So with rural jurisdictions and rural races and smaller races, more localized races, they get nastier.
They can at times. And even when you do, and it's just, it's not even, they get nastier, but it's just once two people start running against each other, even like inter-party, it makes things awkward, especially at the lower, like a very, in the smaller communities, because now it's, and it seems like they're okay, but do they really feel okay? And then after a while, you're around them when they're a little more candid, and they're like, "Oh, fuck this guy," and the other guy's like, "No, fuck him," and you're like, "Yeah, they hate each other." So,
yeah, I think if you let your ego get into your politics, if you allow your ego to invade your campaign and your politics, it would be very, very hard to recover emotionally from a loss. Like, I came into the campaign knowing that there was a very large potential I would lose. So I just did my best. And if I lost, I lost. Like, I didn't take it personally that people didn't vote for me. If anything, I felt badly that I didn't do enough. That was a prevailing feeling I had for a while. Like, I had let people down. So yeah, I do. I really do think he has a shot at it, because Burgess Owens is one of the most locally active politicians I know. So he shows up like John Curtis. Where the F is John Curtis ever, right? Where's Mr. Moore ever, Congressman Moore? Nobody knows these guys. No one knows where they are. But Burgess Owens takes the time to show up all throughout the state, to be there for events, to highlight people in his community. Yeah, I would say he does. He has a really good shot of winning a statewide race. I can't hear you.
Oh, part of his district is part of Salt Lake City. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He endorsed me as well. Burgess is amazing, and he shows off his big what is that called?
Super Bowl ring.
Super Bowl ring.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fit on, like, I can put two fingers.
You got to get quicker on that, because you're like, oh, his big. What's that? You're giving chat too much opportunity to jump in.
Yeah, well, chat's gonna chat. Chat's gonna chat. I'm not running for office for a while.
He won for the Raiders.
Yes, he did. And then he went bankrupt, and then he lived in a tiny little apartment in Manhattan and worked like two jobs to like make ends meet, one of which included being a bellman. He's a genuinely humble, nice guy. I really, really love Burgess Owens.
And Alex Blackfoot for $10. Thank you, Alex, saying Beta O'Rourke. Yes. Thank you for correcting us.
I thank you for correcting us. I'm going to start saying that because I like Beto's. There's a Mexican restaurant here called Beto's, and it always makes me sad when I have to say that.
Yes, well, it's when people call him Beto, it's like you mean Bob the fake Mexican. Like he's Irish. And then Unhung Hero for $2 says, I have not said the N-word enough to run in Ohio.
Sean,
Thank you.
Who said the M-word a lot in Ohio?
A lot of people in Ohio say the N-word a lot, but I don't know he's just saying in general.
Oh, I see.
He's just saying to me, he's not making a joke about a politician, but
I was going to say if he had referenced blackface and you were in Virginia, that'd make more sense.
Yeah, but no, that's no.
How does that governor? How did he get reelected so many times with how many incidents of blackface? Because him and Justin Trudeau.
Ralph Northam won because the most powerful counties of Virginia are the DC counties. That's where all the government workers are. That's where all the population is. Those are, out of the 10 richest counties in America, like 5 or 6 of them are in DC or Maryland or DC doesn't have counties, you dumb fuck. Maryland or Virginia.
DC doesn't have representation at all.
Yeah. Well,
all.
But I would say counties.
They ironically are the taxation without representation, not state.
Good for them. They deserve it.
They do.
Yes.
FDC.
So. Just
kidding. I love you, DC. I've been to every state in the country except for Maine, Alaska. That's it.
Classmate back says, was Chiang Kai-shek a good guy? No, because he didn't kill Mao. He didn't kill him. He let Mao do his long march and let Mao do his walkabout. And
you know who else didn't kill Mao when he had the opportunity?
FDR.
And President Truman.
Because MacArthur said, hey, if we're dropping nukes, we might as well go ahead and take the peninsula while we can.
Yes.
Could have saved millions, hundreds of millions of lives over the course of 10, 15, 20 years. That's how much.
I agree. And it's funny because Truman acted like he was Daddy Big Dick for, microwaving parts of Japan. And it's like
such a little pussy. Truman was the biggest pussy we've ever had in office.
Yes, he was okay with nuking Japan, but then when the time came, hey, we need to microwave Beijing, and we need to go microwave what's going on across the Yalu River. Oh, I don't want to do that.
Right, but he is also the one who said, let's push all the way to the Yalu. He's the one who authorized MacArthur to do that. And as soon as he pushed to the Yalu, and everybody in China was saying, oh yeah, if you get to the Yalu, we're going to fight back. Then they fought back and acted surprised. I mean, it's all bullshit. It's complete bullshit. Truman stands for the proposition that weak men are the most dangerous men in the world. Period.
Yes. Nico says Peking at the time. Fine. We'll nuke him like a Peking duck.
Sure.
Yeah.
I am so
FDR will not stand for this.
nuking China back then. That's when it should have been done.
Yes. Yeah, well, I got my 3D printer. It was probably made in China, so we can nuke them now. I'm all set.
Well, and screw FDR for federal agencies too.
Well, a lot of things.
Yeah.
Hope that cousin fucker was enjoying himself.
How? Never mind.
They gloss over that part too. He was a cousin fucker.
He was a cousin effer, but so were the Rockefellers, his buddies. So and the Rothschilds.
Am I going to run to be Jim Traficant 2.0? Well, I first have to go be a sheriff and then get really based. You know who Jim Traficant is or was?
Mm-hmm.
So Jim Traficant was a congressman from Ohio. He got convicted and sent to prison. But before that, he was the sheriff of Mahoning County. That's where Youngstown is. I don't know if you've ever heard of Youngstown.
Youngstown Sheet and Tube. Yes, I have. And I drove through it once. And
well,
guess what?
there's that. Yes.
That case.
And yes, Youngstown. Well, okay. That's the problem with people who go to law school, guys. Okay, so when
all
you
of
read
killing ducks or chickens.
Are you like, okay, when I was in law school, one of the con law professors actually had made it a habit of like they went to like where, for example, there's a hardware store in Oregon that they had a case that went to the Supreme Court, and it's still in business, and he had gone out there and he, when they was out sightseeing and touring, he went and bought a hammer from there that, there's one of the cases, I'm talking about. It had the hammer, like it had the, Johnson's Hardware Company from wherever in Oregon. Like he did like constitutional law tourism. So like one of the famous cases was Euclid, Ohio, because if you guys have ever heard of the term Euclidean zoning, that's where it came from, and it went to the Supreme Court. So like people do this stuff. But you said Youngstown Sheet. So
Do you remember that case?
That's the one where Truman took up the mill, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And these poor farmers. Okay, guys, this is the case set up. Okay, these poor farmers, they have this little farm. Okay, and they have these chickens. And at the end of this runway, or no,
Youngstown Sheet.
This is the mill. This is the mill. I'm sorry.
So during the Korean War, there was a strike at a steel mill, and Truman said, he wasn't afraid. He was too afraid to fight the Chinese. But when the steel workers were striking, he said, fuck this. And he made the army go run the steel mill to make steel.
He played commie and he stole the steel mill in that case. There's another case out of Ohio, though, with the chickens that cracks me up.
There's a bunch of cases from Ohio.
But it was a horrible holding from that time.
Oh.
And it was like they had a runway and the planes were taking off and it was killing all the chickens. And it was a question of whether or not that constituted a taking.
I'm not sure about that one. I know Matt v. Ohio, because Don King was helping run numbers and the mob blew up his house.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them from Ohio. Brandenburg v. Ohio, because there's a bunch of Klansmen from Ohio charged taking a case to the Supreme Court. So,
wait, isn't there one not Kenosha but nearby where there was a bunch of like white supremacists marching? There was a famous case.
Skokie, Illinois.
That's it, Illinois. Yes. I was like, well, I thought I had been there. I've been to almost every city.
I went to Skokie and I also started goose stepping.
So wait, are you from Youngstown then?
No, I'm not. I just, Youngstown is a very nasty town, and if you're from Ohio, it's bad there.
Yeah.
They have a lot of problems. So anyway, Jim Traficant got elected to be the sheriff of that county. And this is back in like the late 70s. And he got famous because he said, I'm not evicting people. So he refused to do evictions. And he got nationally, he got a lot of press for that. Because people are like, right on, man. Like, you're like, the economy's starting to get to shit. And he's like, I'm not kicking people out of their homes.
So he pulled a 2020.
Kind of.
Okay.
He became very much a man of the people. He then later got indicted for RICO by the feds. And he represented himself. And he's the only man to go pro se. And, for you guys at home, that means he was a home gamer. He went on his own, fought a RICO case on his own, and got acquitted. And then he went to, he's the only person to do that. Pro se RICO trial, and he won.
Bro, what's this guy's name again?
Jim Traficant.
I'm going to go do research. Jim Traficant.
Yes, he's very much a mad lad. And then he ran and became a many, many term congressman for that area. And then he got convicted for corruption and bribery.
Shocker.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a chart somewhere that's like time in office and corrupt
Well,
politicians.
the thing is, though, Youngstown is a very corrupt place. So that was, people from Ohio joke. It's kind of like if you merge The Wire and Sopranos together, you kind of get that feel, because that part of Ohio going along down the river, and apparently the Italians were used as coal miners, which I didn't really know that was the thing. I thought it was just the Irish, but apparently they, made the Wops go mine coal.
And
So
Chinese
like,
too.
well, yes, the Chinese too, but
Yeah,
yes,
but
they
you were
made the
shocked by
Italian.
the Italian bit.
Yes, I
Okay.
was, honestly. But like if you go along the Ohio River to like a town called Steubenville, that's where Dean Martin is from.
Oh,
So
I
yeah,
like Dean
like
Martin.
there's, and Steubenville's kind of rough too. And
What's it called?
Steubenville.
Say it slowly.
Steubenville.
Ah, thank you.
Oh, God.
I'm not joking. I genuinely could not.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm being Ohio man or something. That's
It just
not my intent.
No, it sounded like Stupidville, and I
Well,
couldn't unhear it.
Depending on who you know from Ohio, they would call it Stupidville.
So I was like, that can't be the name of this place. He's got to be joking.
Steubenville.
Okay, Steubenville.
Steubenville.
Oh, it's the German? Steubenville.
Well, there's like Baron von Steuben.
Ah.
It's not Steuben, it's Steuben.
Steuben.
He was a guy who he was involved in helping train the soldiers at Valley Forge.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, he kind of got them gamed up. So
that's awesome.
Unhung Hero for $5 says Youngstown's about halfway from New York and Chicago. Yep, and this is part of the why they would meet there, and it was on, and I-80 runs right through it. So the mob would meet there, and yeah, they would start car bombing each other. Yep.
I have one complaint against
I have not heard that in a long time.
That's fascinating.
It was called a Youngstown tune-up. Yes.
I'm going to keep that in my pocket. That's a little tidbit of information I needed to know. Thank you.
If somebody gets car bombed, you can call it a Youngstown tune-up.
You never know. So Sean.
Yes.
Can you explain something to me?
Okay.
Do you know if Utah and Ohio have an agreement as it pertains to the enforcement of tolls and traffic laws?
Why did you blow through the turnpike and not pay?
Here's the thing.
You could just start. My clients do this too. Just answer me, yes or no. Did you blow through the toll booth?
I don't know, which is the problem. Every single highway, byway, anything that has or doesn't have stoplights in Ohio is a toll road.
No, we're not actually like that. Most roads in Ohio aren't toll roads. It's mainly the turnpike, is it?
Well, you
should go to Florida where every road's a toll road.
Pardon?
If you go to Florida, especially on the East Coast of it, everywhere is a toll road because they don't pay income tax.
Yeah, so I used to live on the East Coast of Florida, and I can confirm that. But
Ohio only has the turnpike. So,
well, I drove the turnpike from Pennsylvania to Chicago, and I don't recall paying anything. So,
I don't. Well, how long ago was this?
I can't confirm this. I mean, upon information and belief, maybe this happened like 2018-ish.
Oh, geez, why are you worried about that? If they would have done something by now.
Right?
That's a little problem.
Okay.
Yeah, they would have done something by now, and they haven't. So,
because I'm in a dispute about tolls with the state of California right now. I paid the $9 toll online, and now they're trying to find me additional amounts because they're like, you paid late, and I told them to go fuck themselves, and I stand by that statement because I'm pretty sure we don't have an agreement with California, and that's it. I paid my toll. Fuck off.
Yeah, I don't think we do. So.
Okay, that's encouraging. I thought about running for a bigger office, and
the high turnpike commissioner.
I was just waiting. I'm like, I can't go to the Ohio caucus because I'm gonna get there, and they're gonna be like, "Ma'am, can you please come with us?"
No, I don't think they do anything like that. I think you're fine.
Okay.
David Joyner for $5. Thank you, David. Said America's Untold Stories with Mark Robert and Eric Hunley. I think, or would you say Eric Hunley and Mark Robert? I don't know which. I don't know how they prefer to be addressed. It's a very good channel if you haven't had a chance to watch it. They did a program on Traficant yesterday. Oh, nice.
Oh. What's the name?
So Jim Traficant. Oh, the show or the channel?
Yeah, the show. The show.
Oh, America's Untold Story. So Eric Hunley from Laid Back News.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, and Unstructured. So
Yes.
hold on here. I gotta do
By
it
the
like
way,
Robert
you know
Barnes
who
does. He's
our
like
viewers-
America's Untold Stories, or however he does it exactly. So Mark Robert is a reporter. He's been around forever, out in LI. So he's very well connected, knows a lot of things. And this is so Eric Hunley, and that's obviously Mark Robert. They're very good. They do a lot. They did a lot with Alec Baldwin when that all went down. They were covering it. They still cover it, but they had a ton going on there. So yeah, they're very, very good.
Show me his face.
Well, right there. So
okay.
Obviously that's Eric, and then this is Mark Robert.
All right, scroll down. I feel like I'm subscribed to this channel, maybe. Family of CIA. Ooh, now I really want to check them out.
Yeah, they've done a lot. They did a lot about Harvey Oswald and JFK at the time. They did all kinds of stuff. They go through all kinds of things that go on. Like they did like Hank Williams. They talked about the Weather Underground. The Rosenbergs, David Greenglass. May the Rosenbergs crispify in peace.
Okay.
For what they did for giving the Soviets the bomb.
Interesting. We should do a case review. Did you see the January 6th case just got taken up by the Supreme Court?
Yeah. Oh boy, that's going to be fun because I'm sure they're going to say the obstruction of Congress doesn't count. And I want to see, I want the tears of Twitter. It's going to be like when the Ukrainian aid got shot down yesterday. It'll taste even sweeter than those tears.
So what are the issues on appeal before the Supreme Court that they're willing to hear? Because I mean, there's so many.
Does it apply to this situation? I think there's a couple more. I haven't read through it all, so.
Okay. I want to read through it because I feel like there's just such a deprivation of rights on so many levels for all of these defendants.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the thing is, I know Robert Barnes is not necessarily a fan of him, but there's an attorney, Shipwreck Crew. He's on Twitter. He's done a lot of the January 6th defense work. He's pointed out that as people have been raising questions and the courts have been raising questions, the DOJ has been charging under other sections of the criminal code, and they've been shying away from some of the things they've been using because it looks like there's issues. So
interesting. Well, I'm fascinated. I'm really interested. I'm really interested to see how things play out with that case. I just want clarity. Can you come and interrupt Congress or not? Can you go into the people's house invited and be charged criminally or not?
That's what I want to hear. I want to hear Justice Roberts say. In Iraq, because there's it's going to go there and it's going to be in con law classes when they Iraq it. Some kids are just going to say, "Well, what's the issue here? Is can you come in Congress?"
That's it.
Yeah. And then
Congress can come in you, but you can't come in Congress. That's the rule.
Yes, that's a consent issue.
And that was a joke.
And they're done that. Well, no, they do. They generally do fuck us. So
they do. All
for
the time,
$4.99. Thank you, Ben. Says Dani, I love your patriotism. I'm glad I gave you that flag.
I'm glad you did too. Thank you so much. I'm so touched.
Hopefully it wasn't a Ukrainian flag.
No, it was an American flag that was flying over Saddam Hussein's palace when
nice.
When he was hung, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
He was hanged.
Hanged.
Yes,
Hung is
hanged.
wrong.
He might have been hung, but
he was
I don't care to know.
Past tense, verbs, hard, words, hard. Okay,
well, it's not even past tense or things. It's kind of like, men are hanged because people are hanged. Men in their genitals are hung.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah. It's kind of like horses. They get shod. They don't get shoed. Jim for $4.99. Thank you, Jim. Is saying, if you ever want a good factual breakdown of the mafia in Ohio, watch Kill the Irishman. Yes. Ray Stevenson's in that. Yes. In the 1970s, Cleveland had a massive mob war going, and car bombs were the name of the game. And in fact, yes, where the guy Titus Pulo, Ray Stevenson plays, it was here in Cleveland. They did it, and I've driven by, and you can go to the parking lot and see it's now a parking lot that's obviously been paved over a bunch since then, but you could go to the exact spot where he got smoked and blown up. So
I kind of want to now.
Yeah.
Also been there, done that. Correct.
it's a parking lot in front of an office building. So
I'm going to write this down. Been there, done that. So I remember it was flown at his victory over Iran Palace when I was in Iraq. So so is that when he was our bastard? That's what I'm hearing you say.
Who, me?
Because
What?
Saddam Hussein was always a bastard, but he was at a certain point the U.S.'s bastard, and we liked
Oh yeah,
it.
he was because he killed Iranians for us.
He killed Iranians for us. He dropped the oil prices for us ever so slightly, and then he pissed off OPEC, and then 9/11 happened, coincidentally.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
But no connection.
Yes. And then, and then Osama said, I'll help the Saudi royal family fight. And we're like, no, we got a better deal. And it just all kind of went from there.
And then the only remaining classified items were the fact that almost all of the terrorists were of Saudi descent. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yes.
But did you ever watch the Mafia movie? It was like a comedy. I don't remember what it was called, but I remember watching it as a kid, and it's like a joke on all of the Mafia movies. Anyway, the first part
movie called Mafia, because there's a movie called Mafia that's kind of one of those joke movies.
I think it was called Mafia, and the very beginning of the movie, his dad gets blown up in a car.
I think that's it.
Yeah, or he's blown up in a car, and it's kind of like a backtrack of his life. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, and there's Building 7 as well.
Yeah, no, Building 7 is still a mystery. It's actually interesting. So I went to Ground Zero when I went for the International Lawyer Convention thing. And I'm walking around Ground Zero, and there's like a tiny plaque that says, here's where Building 7 was.
Oh, there is?
Yeah. It's a very small plaque that's like, here was a federal building for building number 7. It housed some offices, but no one died here, fortunately, that day. And I'm like,
no, just what was in the vaults.
Except for the one guy who did walk in and saw the coffee pot was still hot and noticed everyone else was gone, and so he decided to leave. Did you hear this testimony?
Yeah, I've heard of this story before. Yes.
And it just so happened he had pissed off his superiors in the FBI. So everyone got the memo but him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. An unhung hero for $2. Thank you again. Says you can be unhung, but you're not able to be unhanged.
Unhanged.
Yes.
Unless you're that one guy that survived that hanging that one time and then he was released.
A couple people have survived hangings.
Yeah.
A couple people have survived. Generally does not happen though. And Jim Satala says, yes, the car bombs were Casino, and that's not a comedy. Well, there's that too.
So. I had to watch Casino because I took gambling law here in Utah, and we got to go down to Nevada and hang out with the owner of the Wynn Hotel. What's his name? Steve
Sheldon Adelson.
Maybe
that's the big guy who runs Vegas's.
But it was hilarious because we met with one of the owners of a few of the hotels, and the whole time our professor saying, "No, the mafia is not involved anymore. They can't be." Da 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 da. So the first guy we meet, he comes in, he's got this really thick, like Brooklyn type Italianish accent. And his name's Vinny.
Did you ask them, like, would somebody be able to remove the windows from their hotel rooms without assistance or triggering alarms? You should have asked when you were there.
Should have asked.
Like, say I wanted to remove a window, would anybody know?
Here's my ongoing theory. The mafia and the mob still very much runs Vegas, without question. I just think that they're an arm of the intelligence agencies now, and so they just kind of do what they have to get along, and they're sort of in the background, and they pay their taxes now. And I think that's the key thing is they're just paying for their own protection from the state to do what they want.
So John Gotti was a glowy.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying, because this guy, I mean, and you can ask anyone,
Mhm.
when the Saudi princes come to play in Vegas, they'll rent out several rooms and they'll
Mhm.
stay in they'll rent out different hotel rooms in different
Mhm.
hotels. And then
Mhm.
they get special protection. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Vegas shooter was a contractor. He worked as an engineer for
Mhm.
several different military contractors, one of which I don't think was Raytheon. I think it was Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, and one other.
Mhm. Well, and yes, Jim, and if people don't know this, in Casino, when Ace Rothstein is dealing with the county commissioner who was giving him trouble, that was a young strapping lad named Harold Reed. And he
Shut
later,
up!
yes, Harry Reid was. Oh, Harry Reid was.
He was Mormon.
Yeah, he was. Yes, um, yes. Yes, in Las Vegas and Clark County was a very corrupt place because it was the middle of nowhere. And yes, Harry Reid was a very corrupt man who was able to fuck with the mob because he had power in the state government and the governorship, and those people. And then eventually Harry parlayed that into becoming senator. So
Nice.
yes, and yes, I agree. Yes, maybe he got his fall. When he fell, that was somebody finally, squaring up with the house, which could
This is
easily be.
embarrassing. Is he not dead?
No, Harry. I thought Harry is dead.
I thought he was dead. I thought he passed
Yeah.
away. Someone in chat said was, and I was like, I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
he was.
yeah. He's not alive anymore. Yeah, he.
Unless that's a joke about eternal life in Mormons.
Oh well, maybe. But, anyways, thank you. Oh, by the way, Harry Reid, thank you for the nuclear option. I appreciate having Brewski Brett on the Supreme Court. Appreciate that. Yeah.
He cracks me.
Yeah,
That
he's
whole
dead.
died in 2021. Okay, see, I thought so. I was like, I know
Yeah.
I'm crazy, but I'm not that level of crazy.
No. Yes. So, yeah. So with that being said, Danny, I know it's been a G-Tech saying, what's the tie-in to the LDS in this? Well, he was just a Mormon. That was the tie-in. So
There's a great book you should read called Mormons and the Mafia.
oh,
Yeah. There's yeah. There's a
interesting.
reason I talk about Mormons being in intelligence agencies. There's a reason why the FBI like central hub is here in Salt Lake. There's a
Mhm.
reason why the CIA is stacked full of Mormons.
Isn't there
It's
a
not
big
just
NSA facility in Utah too? One of the big
Mhm.
data centers.
The big data center is just right down the street over here. Like I can see it from my window and it disturbs the shit out of me.
Like,
And
how far away are you if you were to say, like, if you had like an 82 millimeter mortar or something like that? Are you within range of that? Have you ever done the?
I'm not
You ever
within
done the
range.
calculations? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not within range, but I'm sure that there are others who are. I don't support that. I disavow.
I'm not saying you support it. I'm just saying things happen.
I'm in like range of like no, I'm not in range of that either.
You're like an FPV drone. You
Yeah.
can do it. Yes, a drone can make it there. A drone carrying a couple pounds of weight can make it
We
too.
also have a ton of like missiles, like Minuteman missiles over that way. We have
Yeah, well, I'm not worried about those.
Yeah.
Oh, so
I'm worried
but-
about the incompetency of Dugway Proofing Ground. They're the ones that have like all of the dead diseases that we're developing.
Yeah, that's why it's in the desert. But that's why we put it in the desert.
You would think, but then they decided to mail anthrax and mustard gas to the South Koreans via snail mail.
Mhm.
And the South Koreans were unaware of this until they found it on base and opened up a package and it said, hey, here's some nerve agent and anthrax.
Well, hey, it's a surprise. It's just that Asian culture is about like giving gifts and being nice and
Yeah, the best prize is a surprise. So that's what they got that time. We had a problem with the lockdown. There was no conclusion. We don't know where some of the nerve agents went, but nerve agents just kind of go missing from base often.
well, I mean, I don't know why they go
it's real.
missing. We already know what they do in subways, so
Yeah, true. So what do you want to do? Like, do you want to just be an attorney forever? Do you want to run for like what's your goals?
I mean, I always like to think it'd be cool to be, it would be cool to be in office. But I also think though I've had some experience as of the past couple of years being kind of like behind it and being behind the scenes and doing some of that stuff. And I'm not talking about like the hack political operative stuff, but like sometimes like some of the hatchet man stuff is kind of fun to do. Like that's been actually a little bit of fun for me. So like I've kind of enjoyed that. I think it'd be a little more fun to be on that side of things. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like at some point I think I might like to be a judge, but probably not for a while. I think I have a lot more learning to do and a little more experience to do. But also, I mean, I've talked to some judges and they say, yeah, it's great, but they also say at times, you know, the one judge I really respect a lot, he said, it's being a judge is a lot like being a child now because you have two parties who are only telling you what they want you to know, and you have to accept it and make your decisions based on what these two people are telling you. And obviously, they are not telling you everything for whatever reason. Sometimes they're agreeing to hide things from you. And he's like at times he's like, I miss it because I want to know everything. But I think at some point I'd like to be a judge, just not right now.
I think you have an excellent temperament for a judge. I could never, but I respect you, and I think that you could do a great job. Truly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind arguing.
Beyond SCOTUS, I would not be there's no way. I'm not part of the Ivy League mafia. That's never going to happen.
Do you have commissioners in your jurisdiction?
County commissioners, yes. They're the people who run the county. You might call them executives in other counties.
So. I mean like judicial commissioners. So not judges, but they basically are judges. They have the same authority as a judge.
I mean, like we have like magistrates, but those are hired by judges.
Yes, magistrates.
Those are hired by judges. I think I'd like to. The only problem is a lot of judges, though, and I'm not saying this because like I would do it too if I was a judge. When you're the magistrate, you get all the stuff like the judge doesn't want to do. So for a lot of judges, it's like all the civil stuff, and you get like the protection orders, and it's like and I'm like I don't really want to do all that. Like I because you know what? If I was a judge, I'd be like, here you go, magistrate. Do all the here's the stuff I don't want to touch.
Mm-hmm. See, and I argue in front of commissioners, which are magistrates, all day, every day, because I do family law right now.
Well, actually, Tim here is right. I want to be. I just want to own my killdozer in peace.
You'll never own a killdozer in peace.
We'll see about that.
I mean, you may build one in peace until it becomes one, and then you will never be in peace.
Oh, I will. I guarantee you, Marv was like, it's like that song goes like, believe it or not, I'm walking on air. As he's just blowing through that town, I'm sure he was just, he was on a different plane. He was on a celestial plane. I mean, he was up there with Buddha. Buddha's like, how the hell did you do this? And and Marv just like, take a look, and Buddha's like, not bad. So
here's my thing with that. Psychopath, yes. Not well in the head, yes. Driven crazy though by bureaucrats and corrupt politicians, also yes.
Yes.
So,
See, there you go. Brimstone says, don't ruin our dream of bumper killdozer bumper cars.
Hey, I just don't want another Waco. That's all I'm saying. Okay. As soon as ATF gets a whiff of this killdozer thing, it's over.
He was walking on sunshine. Yeah. Oh, well, hey, you know what? No, I mean, if I have a killdozer, when they try to like run the tanks through, it's kind of like, boom. And there's ways you can, there's ways you can replay Waco that turn out, maybe the same angle, but I'll be shooting for the high score. I'll say that much.
Jesus. Waco.
Literally and figuratively.
Why we don't talk about Waco.
Well, the bigger one is Ruby Ridge.
We don't talk about Ruby Ridge. We don't talk about Kansas, Ukalala, and what happened with the tribes. We don't talk about any of that shit because people would then start to question the government.
Yes.
And I think that's why Youngstown Sheet and Tube, why that case pisses me off enough to like stick in the very back recesses of my mind to remind me the government can and will take your property.
Oh yeah, they'll take all the property.
Whenever.
They'll take your spirit. They'll take the property that houses your soul.
They'll take your soul if they could.
Yes, well, yes, they would if they could. But no, when it comes to all that, it's Somebody brought up Kent State. Well, and why the police informant had a handgun that was completely empty of ammunition at that point.
Or the Bundys or the Whitmer cases.
Well, that's funny because the Bundy keeps on getting indicted for stuff, and like he keeps on winning. Like, kind of makes you wonder: is he a glowy though?
No, he's not. Here's the thing: he was grazing on public land.
No. That first one I get, but he keeps on winning though. Because I mean, like it makes you wonder what the hell, like, because it's like one thing you win once or twice, you're like, okay, I respect that, but when you keep winning, I tend to think there's something going on. Like,
I can tell you why he's winning, because by and large, are the 10th Circuit and the judges here in Utah and Nevada are very anti-federal land.
Yes.
And federal land takings.
Yes.
So when the government comes in and says, you can't do this on federal land, they're more than willing to look for any reason to award the petitioner what relief they're seeking.
Okay.
I have that. That's my sneaky suspicion.
Well, and the thing with the Bundys is when people are like, oh, well, I'm like, I don't give a shit what the Bundys are doing. The fact they told the government to fuck off and won is good enough for me. I don't care if they were sitting there and pouring battery acid by the train car load down a hole in the ground and it was going into the drinking water. I don't care if they were killing every endangered species possible and masturbating while they did it. The fact they got the government to back off is good. They fought the government. Good enough.
Yeah, and nobody talks about
anybody standing up to them, I will do. And I did need to say, Dani, I'm sorry, it is almost 11 for me.
I'm so sorry.
Out in the real time zones where we have real time, where like, government happens, and the East Coast.
Oh no, it's a completely made up place. It reminds me of
Mountain Time.
It's Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and we're not going to Camelot. 'Tis a silly place. That's sort of how it feels like.
I didn't realize that though. Time flies. But Unhung Hero for $2 says, "Can you be a foamer and run a killdozer?"
What's a foamer?
Oh my god. Okay. So a foamer is a special level of autism. It's like there's autism for everything. There's weeaboos and all that. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And in Korea, whatever you call those white guys who like to be Korean and are obsessed with Korean culture, whatever. What do they call them in Korea when that happens?
Just losers.
Oh, how do you say that in Korean? How do you say loser in Korean?
I don't know. There's just weird wegukinder. Like, I don't know. Jeff might know.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So foamers are trained autists. And it's
wait, train autists?
Like autists, like they're autistic, and their thing is trains. And it's not just like model trains, it's about like real life trains.
Are you talking about autism or like
yes, like autism
R word? Like, are you talking about clinical autism, or are we talking about like the
they're on the spectrum somewhere, and they really like trains. So like they're fired up about, and God,
so they're like savants.
Yeah, well, not you don't have to be
to trains.
You could be on this. Remember, it's a spectrum, so you're not everybody's high functioning. Like not everybody's a beautiful mind. A lot of people are on the other end, or just in the middle.
Yeah.
So so foamers are. Hold on here. They're obsessed with trains. So like they'll say like the Union Pacific's 3944 is like a special locomotive, for whatever reason. They'll be like, "Oh my god, it's coming through town," and they film it. Or is
there word for aviation nuts that are like that?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but look, I love planes. Planes are a lot fucking cooler than trains. So no, it's not. I am not a plane autist. There are no plane autists.
A boat autist then?
Ooh, he's a floater. Jeff's a floater.
There's a term for the boats.
I don't know. I'm calling it right now. I'm coining the term. Jeff's a floater. Jeff's a floater.
Poor Jeff. I love you, Jeff.
Jeff's calling sky foamers. Do not mock chemtrails. Do not call them sky foaming. That is not funny.
Yeah. Well, no, we have a word for it. It's called cloud seeding. We don't call chemtrails.
Yeah.
Cloud.
Well, I was going to say, did you was part of your campaign platform, like, I'm going to ban chemtrails in Utah? Was that part of your campaign platform? Because I'm sure that would have helped.
So I would like to see more research into chemtrails and the efficiency and the way in which the aluminum that is dispersed actually interacts with SSRIs along what we consider the suicide belt, which starts at the base of the Rocky Mountains and follows all the way up to the top. We have some of the highest suicide rates in the nation. A lot of people have attributed that to being at high altitude for long periods of time, but that doesn't quite check out either. I think, in my opinion, there's some kind of connection between cloud seeding and SSRI intakes.
I was trying to make a joke, but yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just we spend quite a bit of money on cloud seeding, and it's what creates a lot of our snow and our snowpack here in Utah. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
should we ban overall chemtrails? Yes.
Yes, chemtrails are bad. So this is this guy, and they film it, and railroad personnel hate foamers. They are so obnoxious. But here's what a foamer. This guy is obsessed with. You're going to see it. It's like this isn't a big deal, but for him, it's the world.
Okay. Do we get audio?
Yes.
Okay.
You should hear it in a second.
Okay.
You can hear it, right?
I've been waiting for this moment for months, and it's finally here.
Oh.
I'm finally going to get a heritage unit on camera. Yeah! All right. Look at that. A 1953 E8. Woo-hoo! Oh, yeah. Listen to that bell. Yeah, listen to that bell. Oh, take a look at that. Oh, my God. Listen to that horn. Oh, my God. Oh, she's beautiful. She is beautiful. Yeah. All right. Oh my! Oh no! It's a BL2 too. Oh, the SNC 52. Oh my God! Oh, we're gonna watch this. Oh, this is special. This is special. Oh, that horn gives me the chills. Oh, and the chills have absolutely nothing to do with how cold it is here. Oh,
I'm glad you clarified.
That doesn't stop a foamer.
And that guy taking pictures, that guy is, you could probably call him a foamer too.
He's a self-described foamer.
Yeah, the guy taking pictures up there is a foamer, but yeah, listen to him.
Okay.
Oh, but that doesn't stop a foamer. Oh, especially when it comes to heritage equipment. Oh, this is fantastic.
Is this guy
oh my goodness. Look at that. Blue and gray.
The problem is it's hard to tell what's parody and what's satire and what's real.
Because I was gonna say, I wish I was this excited about anything. Like, this guy is high on life. Like, I am actually envious of his enthusiasm, and that is a contagious enthusiasm. Good for him.
Yeah.
You know what? Good for him. Of all the things that you can be in the world, foamer, decisively not the worst. I'm calling it. Spicy take. Dani is fine with foamers, I guess.
Nico's saying, Alyssa, get in here. Lost in Law. Hey, Tim, saying, are there frogs in Utah? And how gay are the frogs? How gay are the frogs getting?
Very, very.
And Hunch the Dirty Roofer says, since Jeff loves maritime accidents, would he be a sinker instead? No, I like the floater. Jeff's a floater.
Like floater. Floater's a better term.
He's a floater.
Has Jeff popped into the chat yet?
He's doing super chats, but yes. Jeff's just the dude just coomed everywhere. Yes, he did.
Oh.
Yes. Steph, we're not sending trains to my P.O. box.
I am sending trains to your P.O. box.
Well, at least you're not sending them to my house.
You know, the Golden Spike is here in Utah.
Yes.
I have a Golden Spike pin somewhere here for the commemoration of
nice.
Of the Golden Spike. Yeah, no, it's a big deal out here. And it is not in Davis County. It is in Box Elder County.
And that's because Promontory Point, Utah, that's where the Union Pacific met and they drove in the Golden Spike.
Actually, interesting bit of history here. So the Mormons,
isn't that right? Promontory Point? Isn't that where it was? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the Mormons here agreed to help build the railroad, basically provide free labor, aka slavery, to the railroad, saying, hey, look, we will provide free labor to you if you extend the railroad down to our mountains, going from Salt Lake down to the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, okay. And it was so that we could build the temple. So the temple Salt Lake City temple took 40 years to build. And by the time they had completed the railroad, it took about 3 years to finish, because they were able to finally send granite from the mountains to Salt Lake City.
Are people being racist?
No, they're not. They're making fun of somebody else right now.
Shame.
They're not being racist at all.
Okay, good.
That happens. That'll happen. Don't worry. That happens other times. Usually most of the time. But no, I can say that one wasn't racist.
You got to have me come back on, man. This is fun.
No, we definitely will. But I honestly, and this is more of, I know these people are here, you people are here, but I had a lot of questions myself because I don't know somebody who's run for a major office like that. And I assume a lot of people here, this is one of the bigger cities in America. You were going for it. So
I did.
Yes, you people, Das Boot. That's what I mean. Yes, you people. So that is it, guys. It is getting a little late here on my end. Real quick, I have one last question, and we're just gonna answer this real quick. Dani, what is your favorite letter of the tower? I'll explain to you later. Never mind. I'll explain to you later. And before I go, because I need to do it, it is a very quick plug for our sponsor for tonight on the show is Simply Strung Together. Yes, Simply Strung Together. If you guys are looking for Christmas gifts for the women in your life, or let's say you're a guy and you want to wear earrings, I guess if you really want to do that, go for it. But you can get angel earrings, you can get ornaments done, you can get dangles, you can get scarves, you can get necklaces, you can get like bracelets, you can get these like little snowmen, the Grinch earrings, all you want. Everything is 10% off with the promo code potentially criminal. Just giving it away. It's crazy out there. Crazy low prices.
Those are beautiful.
Yes, and if you guys really do need a Christmas present at the last freaking minute, because it's getting close, and I'm kind of on boat too, so I can't buy any of this shit for myself to help my butt out of trouble. Guys, you can. It's all available there. SimplyStrungTogether.com. So.
Somebody in the chat asked what my favorite race was since I started talking about races, and it's the Iditarod race. Because I love Balto.
I was going to say, yeah, people are going to say because there's dogs in it, Dani. Of course
God
you like
damn it! I can't even say cute things. You guys ruined everything.
You ran right into that one. So, all right, guys. Well, that is it for tonight. Dani, yes, we're going to do this again. It was a lot of fun. I know last time I was on was a lot of fun, but with your channel. But yeah, we should back soon. So
don't do it. Don't highlight any more comments now.
Well, no, this one actually was an interesting one. Were you ever nervous, or were you just like all about it when you were interacting with people? Was it even like? Was it just kind of like you're like in the zone when you're out there meeting people and talking to them?
There were some times where people threatened my life. Typically scrangly, ugly liberal women who were upset that I said that abortion was not an issue that was on the table for me, but that I would enforce the law, whatever it may be, as a DA. And that likely their little Roe v. Wade was about to be overturned because it was bad law from the start. And then, all hell broke loose. And then that was an issue.
Your husband's in the background like, oh no, whatever you guys do, please don't do that. That would break my heart.
Oh, I pissed off everyone. So, I mean, there were a lot of death threats.
Snipers does so half of Salt Lake City.
Yeah, like I here's the thing though. I got a lot of death threats when I was in undergrad and when I went to law school from like Antifa leaders. Actually, what's his name? Daniel something, the black guy who was at January 6th, who was there when the veteran was shot and was like right behind her and witnessed it happen and then got off on some plea deals.
Oh, he's from Salt Lake City?
Yeah, so he was the chapter president for Antifa when I was in undergrad.
Hmm.
And I got targeted by Antifa for saying that affirmative action was racist, for saying that women can have what's called implied consent because we are adults, whereas express consent would put us on the same level as children. And as a self-proclaimed version of feminism that I am, I can't stand by that. So I was immediately labeled as a rapist apologist and a racist, and I was hunted down often. And the campus police had to drive me to my car a few times.
Mm.
Yeah. But nothing was ever done against him. It's that same group, by the way, that attacked Steven Crowder or attempted to.
It's also the same group that smashed Sim Gill's windows.
Yes, same group indeed. And it just so happened he also had to be, he was at January 6th. I mean, I'm not going to say the guy's a glowy, but if there ever was one who just so happens to evade prosecution left and right, is that, you know, not saying that's the case, but I'm saying it's kind of the case.
Yeah. So I guess you guys got another glowy out in Utah. So,
yeah.
All right, guys. Yeah.
We need it.
Yes. So thank you, everybody. Thank everybody here tonight. Twitter, Twitch, which I'm still on, surprisingly. The Book
John
of Faces.
Sullivan, that's his name. Thank you.
The Book of Faces, and then everybody here on YouTube, guys. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the super chats, the memberships, guys. Everybody, thank you so much. Tomorrow night, 9:30, you've got the normal show. Lot to talk about. Updates on everything from Richard Allen and the Delphi case to what's going on with Trump and the Supreme Court. So just remember till next time, guys, just because you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. Unless you're Sim Gill, it sounds like you're guilty of being a shitty DA. So good night, everybody.